Chapter 779. The nether butterfly flew over as large swaths of the flowers of life emitted specks of light that gathered towards the nether butterfly. Soon, the entire flower river seemed to turn into a fluorescent river. Fluorescence rose everywhere. Zhou Wen and company were already retreating, but their bodies were the same as the flowers of life. They emitted specks of light, and every speck of light emitted from their bodies made everyone feel a lot less spirited. They felt exhausted and wanted to fall to the ground to sleep. They wanted to stop the radiance from their bodies, but it was useless. Quick, let's go. We can't stop. If we stop, only death awaits us. Gu Shanshui led the way as he ran through the flower river. Some of the Buddha plaques on his body shimmered with a strange light, causing the radiance on his body to slow down significantly. However, it was only slow. It couldn't stop the radiance from spreading out. Bam! The Buddha plaques on Zhou Wen and company exploded as the yellow liquid inside splattered out. The baby statue shattered as well, turning into specks of light that scattered. Many of the Buddha plaques on Gu Shanshui's body exploded. Zhou Wen summoned the golden overlord sword and slashed at the nether butterfly. The nether butterfly flew extremely fast. Even if Zhou Wen could escape, the others definitely couldn't. However, when the golden sword aura slashed at the nether butterfly, it passed through its transparent body without causing any damage. The nether butterfly is a creature of the netherworld. It can shuttle between reality and the netherworld. Ordinary essence energy attacks are useless against it. As Li Mabai spoke, he summoned a companion beast. The companion beast was a white-robed girl holding a black paper umbrella. However, the white-robed girl's face didn't have any facial features, making her look very strange. However, the moment the girl appeared, the black paper umbrella opened and blocked Li Mabai's head. Li Mabai immediately stopped emitting light. Unfortunately, the black paper umbrella was too small. It could only stand 2 people at most. It couldn't envelop everyone. Zhou Wen, try and see if you can kill the nether butterfly, Li Mabai said as he ordered the white-robed girl to hold the black umbrella and float toward Zhou Wen. The white-robed girl floated to Zhou Wen, sighed like a ghost, and used the black paper umbrella to cover his head, preventing him from emitting light. Zhou Wen immediately felt much better and no longer felt exhausted. Without any hesitation, Zhou Wen turned around and charged the nether butterfly with the golden overlord sword in hand. Wait! Gu Shanshui stopped Zhou Wen and extended his hand. A golden child appeared in front of him. The golden child was somewhat similar to Shao Xi's Common Thong, but it didn't have such a terrifying, evil aura. With my life soul, your sword will be able to touch the nether butterfly. You don't have much time. My life soul can only last for 10 minutes at most. As Gu Shanshui spoke, pure metal transformed into a golden beam of light that fused with the golden overlord sword, causing it to have a golden image that resembled a baby or Buddha. The golden light on the sword intensified. Zhou Wen took a step forward and activated Transcendent Flying Immortal. The golden overlord sword in his hand slashed out a golden sword beam that instantly arrived in front of Nether Butterfly. Strangely enough, the white-dressed girl with the black umbrella seemed to be glued to Zhou Wen. No matter how fast he was, she remained by his side, using the black paper umbrella to cover his head. The Nether Butterfly seemed to sense the abnormality of the strike. With a flap of its wings, its body seemed to penetrate the netherworld and vanish. When it appeared again, it was already on the other side of the Flower River. The golden overlord sword in Zhou Wen's hand slashed out sword beams one after another, crisscrossing in the air like golden lightning. However, the nether butterfly's figure flickered, disappearing one moment and appearing elsewhere the next. Zhou Wen's sword failed to hit its body. With the black paper umbrella protecting him, Zhou Wen didn't feel much, but Li Mabai and company were already extremely exhausted. They had no strength to escape and fell to the ground one by one. The weaker Gu Lu and Gu He looked like they were about to fall asleep. Even so, Li Mabai didn't retract his companion beasts. Gu Shanshui didn't retract his life soul either. He continued augmenting Zhou Wen. After failing to hit its target, Zhou knew that he probably couldn't kill the nether butterfly with speed alone. He immediately switched his essence energy art, and the Holy Hell King Life Soul appeared. The eye of the Holy Hell King opened at his glabella. Zhou originally wanted to give it a try to see if the eye of the Holy Hell King could allow him to see the nether butterfly passing through the underworld. However, to his surprise, the moment the eye of the Holy Hell King opened, the glow emitted by the flower of life changed directions. It no longer flew towards the nether butterfly, but surged towards the eye of the Holy Hell King. What was even more terrifying was that the glow on the nether butterfly's body scattered and flew towards the eye of the Holy Hell King. In an instant, the nether butterfly's body glowed brightly as icy blue incantations appeared. The incantations prevented the glow on its body from dissipating. Boom! As its wings flapped, a terrifying icy blue light wave spread out towards Zhou like spatial ripples. Zhou's gaze focused as he slashed out with the golden overlord sword without any hesitation. It transformed into a golden sword beam that sliced through the icy blue light wave. The nether butterfly escaped into the underworld again, but under the eye of the Holy Hell King, Zhou could see the nether butterfly flying in the underworld. However, he couldn't touch it. The moment it escaped from the underworld, the golden overlord sword slashed at its body. The indestructible sword beam killed the nether butterfly and tore its body into two. Ding! A dimensional crystal dropped. It was like a sapphire, and inside was the shadow of the nether butterfly. It was an essence energy skill crystal. The moment the nether butterfly died, its body immediately transformed into countless beams of light that surged towards the eye of the Holy Hell King. At the same time, the light on the flower of life was absorbed by the eye of the Holy Hell King. Li Maobai and company only saw the light that filled the sky surge towards Zhou's glabella like a river of stars, but they couldn't see the eye of the Holy Hell King. Even the white-robed girl with the black umbrella and child metal were no exception. Their bodies emitted light that surged towards Zhou's glabella. However, Li Maobai and company didn't emit any more light. Li Maobai and Gu Shanshui hurriedly unsummoned the white-robed girl with the black umbrella and child metal. Only then did they prevent the light from leaking out. As a large amount of light was sucked into the eye of the Holy Hell King, Zhou vaguely felt that the Holy Hell King Life Soul was about to evolve again. He couldn't help but be delighted. If the Holy Hell King evolved again, it would reach a perfect body. It would be Zhou's second life soul to reach a perfect body. The originally beautiful flowers of life lost their radiance and withered in large swathes. The originally beautiful river of flowers turned into a withered land of death in just a moment. All the light was absorbed by Zhou as the Holy Hell King Life Soul evolved almost at the same time. Chapter 780. The negative karma flames in the eye of the Holy Hell King bloomed like a lotus flower. Invisible negative karma flames surged out like layers of petals that enveloped Zhou's body. Outsiders only saw Zhou when floating in midair and couldn't see the invisible negative karma flames on his body, but they could sense that Zhou's aura was constantly rising. When the aura reached its peak, Zhou's body underwent a tremendous change. The Holy Hell King Life Soul completed its final evolution in the negative karma flames. Instantly, Zhou felt as though his entire body had entered a higher dimension, separated from reality. The real world became extremely filthy in his eyes, like a junkyard. However, his body remained untainted in such an environment. As the negative karma flames in the eye of the Holy Hell King were expended, the eye of the Holy Hell King gradually closed and vanished. When Buddha closes his eyes, there will be no more pure land in the world. The life in the filthy world will be abandoned by Buddha, and the final purification will descend. Looking at the filthy world in front of him, Zhou seemed to come to a realization. Although the eye of the Holy Hell King was closed, his eyes didn't close, nor did he completely sever himself from reality. Instead, he allowed himself to return to the world. The process of condensing a life soul wasn't only related to talent, bloodline, and essence energy art. It was also related to a person's concept and insights. No two people's life souls were identical because everyone's thoughts were different. It was impossible for them to be completely the same. If Zhou had been bent on escaping this filthy world, the Holy Hell King life soul would have evolved in the direction of a sage and eventually become a Buddha or a god. However, Zhou didn't have the thought of transcending. Instead, he entered the filthy world, so the Holy Hell King life soul evolved in another direction. Li Mabai and company looked at Zhou in midair. They originally felt that Zhou's body emitted a holy pressure, as though he was a reincarnated Buddha. However, in the blink of an eye, Zhou's entire body turned dim. It was as though a perfected immortal had been struck down to the mortal world, turning into immortal. They could no longer sense the otherworldly aura from him. It was as though he was an extremely ordinary youth. Zhou landed on the ground and stretched his back. He picked up the essence energy skill crystal that the hell butterfly dropped and asked Li Mabai and company, "There's only one crystal. How do we split it?" "I'm only here for the guardian cocoon. I don't want anything else," Li Mabai said. Gu Shanshui also shook his head and said, "I only hope that you can help me capture the corpse bug after this matter is over. These things are useless to me. In that case, I'll accept this primordial energy skill crystal." Zhou didn't stand on ceremony as he took the crystal. Everyone continued on their way. The flowers of life in the flower river had all withered, and the originally beautiful flower river had become a barren land. There were no living creatures at all, and this allowed them to advance much faster. While rushing, Zhou took out his phone to take a look. Indeed, he realized that the Holy Hell King life soul had evolved again and become a perfect body. However, to Zhou's disappointment, the constitution attribute that corresponded to the Holy Hell King life soul remained at 40 points. It didn't increase to 41 points. This was the same as the advancement of the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. The corresponding essence energy stat didn't advance to 41. It remained at 40. My life soul has advanced to a perfect body, but my stats still haven't reached 41. How can I advance my stats? Zhou was somewhat vexed. He had been looking forward to it for so long. His life soul had advanced to a perfect body, but his stats hadn't increased. This meant that his chances of advancing to the mythical stage by himself were still very slim. However, on second thought, Xia Zhihuang had used the power of 9 life providences and life souls. He had also absorbed the life essence of more than 10,000 epic experts. With the help of lightning, he had advanced to the mythical stage as a human. It didn't seem reasonable for him to advance to the mythical stage with just 4 perfect body life souls. With this in mind, Zhou's heart suddenly stirred. Xia Zhihuang used 9 life providences and life souls to advance to the mythical stage. Does that mean that life souls and life providences are still helpful in advancing to the mythical stage? I didn't take the wrong path. It's just that a single life soul isn't enough to break through the restrictions of stats. Zhou thought of his Tao Sutra and the First Order of Chaos. The two were very similar. They both strengthened his essence energy stat. If I advance the Chaos Egg Life Soul, which also strengthens my essence energy, to a perfect body and augment my essence energy stat with the 2 life souls, will I be able to break through to 41 points? With this in mind, Zhou felt hope. Feeling much better, Zhou carefully looked at the newly advanced perfect body life soul. Supreme Hell King. Perfect body, a supreme existence in hell. The last faith of the source of evil. Zhou could sense that Supreme Hell King was clearly different from the Holy Hell King. Without the eye of the Holy Hell King, he didn't have the supreme authority of the Holy Hell King. The current Supreme Hell King life soul made Zhou feel like he truly belonged to hell. He could enter it with his body, not just through the eye of the Holy Hell King. However, Zhou had yet to try what would happen if he really used the Supreme Hell King life soul to enter hell. Zhou planned on finding an opportunity to give a try in game. In reality, it was best not to rashly attempt it. Even if he didn't enter hell, the strengthening of Supreme Hell King's senses wasn't something that the Holy Hell King could match. With the Supreme Hell King life soul augmenting him, Zhou-Wen's senses were already terrifyingly strong. However, there were also disadvantages to this. Under such sharp senses, no matter what his eyes saw, he felt extremely dirty. It was as though he was in a garbage dump. It was unbearable. If it wasn't necessary, Zhou-Wen usually wasn't willing to activate the Supreme Hell King life soul. Before long, the group crossed the Flower River and arrived near the legendary Valley of No Return. The guardian cocoon that Li Maobai mentioned wasn't in the Valley of No Return, but they had to pass through it. Back then, in order to refine the evil King Gu life soul, Li Maobai had accidentally fallen into a stone cave in the Valley of No Return when he was chasing a Gu King. Furthermore, he followed the stone cave through the Valley of No Return and arrived in an underground cave behind the Valley of No Return. It was there that he discovered the guardian cocoon. Now, Li Maobai led Zhou-Wen and company through the underground tunnel again. They circled around the Valley of No Return that everyone in the South District paled at the mention of and arrived at an underground cave. Indeed, they saw a guardian cocoon. The cocoon was gray and emitted an evil aura. It was different from any guardian Zhou-Wen had seen before. We can't go any further. There's a terrifying mythical creature guarding it. Li Maobai pointed to the side of the gray cocoon. Zhou-Wen and company looked over and saw a calabash vine growing there. Chapter 781. The calabash vine looked very strange. Its roots and leaves were greenish-gray in color, like the color of rocks. It didn't look like a living creature, but more like a stone carving. There was only one calabash on the calabash vine that was 20 to 30 meters long. It was also greenish-gray in color. Is it a plant-type dimensional creature? Zhou-Wen asked. Li Maobai shook his head and said, I can't be sure. It looks like a plant, but the calabash can spew out a Gu King. Therefore, I can't be sure if it's a plant or an animal. Li Maobai explained his understanding of the calabash vine in detail so that everyone could prepare themselves. Back then, Li Maobai had chased a Gu King and mistakenly entered this place. Just as he was about to catch up to the Gu King, it was sucked into the calabash. Li Maobai felt that something was amiss with the calabash vine, so he didn't chase after it. Instead, he used his companion beast to probe it. However, just as the companion beast rushed over, the Gu King that had previously burrowed into the calabash crawled out again. The Gu King was a king of blood-sucking Gu. It was at the epic stage. Back then, if Li Maobai wanted to advance the evil King Gu life soul, he needed to hunt an existence at the Gu King level. Back then, Li Maobai had the evil King Gu life soul. It could be said that apart from mythical Gu, he was immune to all Gu. It wasn't difficult to deal with a blood-sucking Gu King. However, to his surprise, after the blood-sucking Gu King came out of the calabash, it became extremely ferocious. Its strength underwent a tremendous change, as though it had advanced to the mythical stage. It directly killed Li Maobai's companion beast. If Li Maobai hadn't run quickly when he saw that something was amiss, he would have nearly died. Later, Li Maobai came a few more times, but he returned empty-handed. He was no match for the blood-sucking Gu King. Li Maobai suspected that the calabash vine was odd, so he wanted to get rid of it first. After thinking of a way to lure the blood-sucking Gu King away, he would get a fire elemental companion beast to burn the calabash vine. However, to his surprise, before the fire elemental companion beast could approach the calabash vine, another Gu King crawled out of the calabash and killed Li Maobai's fire elemental companion beast. Later, Li Maobai thought of many methods, but they were useless. Even when his evil King Gu life soul reached the perfect body, he still failed to deal with the calabash vine. After John used the six-winged seraphim to fight Zhou-Wen, Li Maobai did a lot of investigations and learned about guardians. Only then did he realize that the truly precious thing wasn't the calabash vine, but the gray cocoon protected by the calabash vine. Unfortunately, he didn't have the ability to deal with the calabash vine. Even if he knew that there was a guardian there, he couldn't contract it. All he could do was cooperate with Zhou. After hearing Li Gu 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 of, and Gu Gu God, of Gu, Li of Gu, of Gu, that's what I see. Li Mabai looked at Zhou and said, do you want me to use a companion beast to lure out the Gu King inside? Of Zhou of a Zhou. Be it ancient or modern battles, intelligence was one of the most important factors. Therefore, when Li Mabai summoned his companion beast and charged at the calabash vine, he used Dr. Darkness's eyes of penetration to look at the bluish-gray calabash. Thankfully, the calabash wasn't a real stone. His eyes of penetration penetrated the calabash and saw what was inside. He was immediately alarmed. Inside the gourd, there were more than a dozen Gu with different appearances. All of them looked strange and creepy. What was even stranger was that the Gu and the calabash were fighting each other. When the companion beastly Mabai summoned approached the calabash, a force controlled one of the Gu and spat it out of the calabash. The Gu looked like a scorpion, but it had dragonfly-like wings on its back. Its mouth was filled with fine teeth, making it look extremely terrifying. The companion beastly Mabai released was an epic black tiger, but the Gu flew onto it. Its tail stabbed into its body, instantly killing it. After killing the target, the Gu was sucked into the calabash again. I've seen a total of 3 different Gu Kings. This is one of them, Li Mabai said. Strange. Gu Shanshui frowned and said, that Gu looked like a snake-scorpion Gu, but it has many characteristics that the snake-scorpion Gu doesn't have. Furthermore, its strength is much stronger than the snake-scorpion Gu. It has indeed reached the mythical stage. This is also what puzzles me. If the Gu and the calabash entered later, there must be some benefits inside that can improve their strength greatly. Back then, after the blood-sucking Gu King entered, its strength increased greatly, and its body underwent a huge change, Li Mabai said. I suspect that the calabash might be a natural Gu pool. Gu Shanshui said with a heavy expression. The so-called Gu pool was to put many Gu worms in it and let them kill each other. In the end, the strongest Gu would be born. Not only would that Gu be the strongest, but it would also absorb the abilities and advantages of other Gu worms in battle. Its strength was far from what ordinary Gu worms could compare to. Gu Shanshui was only guessing, but Zhou could see it clearly. The Gu inside were indeed fighting each other. Furthermore, it looked like a few of them already had mythical strength. Although the other Gu hadn't reached the mythical stage, they were considered extremely powerful existences at the epic stage. This is simply a super Gu pool. If the Gu inside fight to the end, I wonder how powerful the Gu King produced will be. It will probably be comparable to a top mythical creature, right? Zhou couldn't help but be tempted. If he could obtain this calabash, it would be excellent for nurturing Gu. The only pity was that Zhou didn't know how to nurture Gu. Even if a powerful Gu King really appeared inside, Zhou could only kill it and see if a companion egg would drop. Zhou, what do you think? Li Mabai asked Zhou. I think Master Gu is right. That calabash might very well be a natural Gu pool. There might be more than one mythical Gu inside. But where did these Gu come from? Zhou said, there are Gu everywhere in the Valley of No Return. There are quite a number of mythical Gu. I reckon the Gu from the Valley of No Return crawled here and were sucked in by the calabash, Gu Shanshui said. What's your plan? Zhou asked Li Mabai. There's no particularly good solution. I can only lure the Gu Kings inside out one by one and kill them. I'll need to borrow your strength, Li Mabai said. Zhou thought for a moment and felt that it would be a waste to lure the Gu Kings inside out and kill them one by one. Chapter 782. From the looks of it, that's the only way. Although he found it a pity, Zhou didn't know how to rear Gu, so it was useless even if he kept it. Li Mabai had a plan. Mute and Butterfly each summoned a companion beast. Together with Li Mabai's own companion beast, the 3 companion beasts looked identical. They were 3 bronze men. These 3 bronze men were epic companion beasts. Although they were relatively slow, their defenses were extremely powerful. Furthermore, they weren't afraid of the poison that Gu were good at, nor were they afraid that it would invade their bodies. It was impossible to use it to kill a mythical goo, but it was an ideal choice if it was only used as bait. Could these be the bronze men from the founding emperor tomb? Zhou asked in surprise. Li Maobai nodded and said, "They're the bronze men from the founding emperor tomb. In order to obtain these 3 companion eggs, I spent a huge sum of money to buy 3 bronze men companion eggs from the Zhang family." Zhou was no stranger to the founding emperor tomb because it was too famous. Zhou had long wanted to see if there was a tiny palm symbol there, but he never had the chance to go. As there were many evil powers in the founding emperor tomb, ordinary people couldn't enter. Only the Zhang family was an expert in this aspect and could enter to hunt dimensional creatures. Therefore, very few companion beasts were produced in the founding emperor tomb. Furthermore, they were much more expensive than companion eggs of the same level. However, the companion beasts in the founding emperor tomb were indeed very unique. For example, the bronze men were very resistant to essence energy, and their bodies were strong enough. They weren't afraid of all kinds of toxins and microbes. They were very ideal scouts. However, due to the low production, it wasn't easy to obtain 3 bronze men. It was obvious that Li Maobai was determined to obtain them. After the 3 bronze men approached the calabash vine, the goo inside were indeed spewed out. However, this time, it wasn't the one from before. Instead, it was a goo that looked like a mosquito, but its body was protected by a carapace. Li Maobai told Zhou that this was the blood-sucking goo king he had previously chased. However, the blood-sucking goo king in the past wasn't this powerful. Now that the blood-sucking goo king was around, he couldn't afford to have any wounds. As long as there was a wound, even if it was a very small one, the blood-sucking goo king could constantly expand the wound. Blood would gush out until the person died of blood loss. Unfortunately, the bronze men didn't have blood, so the blood-sucking goo king's blood-sucking ability was useless against them. However, the blood-sucking goo king didn't just have the blood-sucking ability. The blood-sucking goo king flapped its wings and flew quickly. The bronze man's eyes could not keep up with its flying speed, and the blood-sucking goo king's mouth pierced his head. If it were an ordinary companion beast, it would definitely be severely injured. However, the bronze men were not afraid at all. It was just an extra hole in their heads. It did not affect them at all. The blood-sucking goo king even burrowed directly into the bronze man's head and came out from the other side. It only injured the bronze man, but it wasn't fatal. Just as Zhou was about to attack, the chick on his shoulder suddenly flapped its wings and flew over. The blood-sucking goo king, who was so mighty just now, was like a mouse that had seen a cat after seeing the bird. Its body suddenly turned soft, and it seemed that it did not even have the strength to resist. Although the chick was powerful, it was still growing. As for the blood-sucking goo king, it was already at the mythical stage. If it fought the chick with all its might, the chick probably wouldn't be able to gain much of an advantage. However, in this world, everything had its vanquisher. The chick's restraint on goo was too powerful. The blood-sucking goo king's legs went limp. It didn't even dare escape, much less fight. The chick flew over and opened its mouth to peck at the blood-sucking goo king. The blood-sucking goo king's shell was too hard. It took it a few pecks to crack open the shell. Then it peeled off the blood-sucking goo king and ate it. From beginning to end, the mythical blood-sucking goo king didn't resist too intensely. A mythical goo was eaten just like that. Li Maobai and company were dumbfounded. Apart from Gu Shanshui, who knew the chick's background, everyone else watched in shock as the chick unleashed its might. Although they knew that the chick was very powerful when it spat out fire to burn the jellyfish fungi, they never expected it to be this powerful. The mythical blood-sucking goo king didn't even have the courage to resist. This couldn't be described as powerful. It was a dimensional blow. After the chick finished eating the blood-sucking goo king, it clearly wasn't satisfied. It flew towards a calabash, hoping to peck it open and eat the goo inside. However, after pecking a few times, the calabash remained unharmed. Even the golden flames that spewed out failed to burn the calabash. The calabash seemed to know how powerful the chick was. No matter how it tortured it outside, it didn't dare spit out the goo inside. Zhou called the chick back and got Li Mabai and company to release the bronze man to lure it again, but it was useless. The calabash refused to spit out the goo inside no matter what. Zhou raised the golden overlord sword and slashed out a golden sword aura at the calabash. The golden sword aura's ever victorious and unstoppable took effect, leaving a crack on the calabash. However, the golden sword beam disappeared when it rushed into the calabash. The crack automatically recovered and quickly vanished. If I had known that inviting you would save me so much trouble, I would have invited you over even if I had to go bankrupt. Li Mabai and company walked over as well. Although he failed to slice off the calabash or kill all the goo inside, the calabash didn't dare make any abnormal movements. Li Mabai had achieved his goal. Ignoring the retreating calabash, he walked towards the gray cocoon of the guardian. Seeing how magical the calabash was, Zhou wanted to get it off, but after slashing a few times, he was sucked in by the calabash. He failed to slice it off. With the chick standing by the side, covetously, ready to eat the goo inside at any moment, the calabash didn't dare make any abnormal movements. It remained in a stalemate. Li Mabai had already walked to the cocoon of the guardian. Without any hesitation, he cut his finger and let his blood drip onto the cocoon. Everyone looked at the blood that dripped onto the cocoon of the guardian. Even Zhou, when temporarily stopped attacking the calabash and looked at the cocoon of the guardian. Zhou naturally didn't wish for Li Mabai to succeed. If Li Mabai succeeded, there would be nothing left for him. Blood slowly flowed down the cocoon of the guardian, but to Li Mabai's disappointment, the drop of blood flowed down from the cocoon and dripped to the ground. It failed to seep in. Master! Butterfly wore a look of disappointment. She wanted to comfort Li Mabai, but she didn't know what to say. A single failure is nothing. If it doesn't work this time, there's always the next time. If this path doesn't work, I'll switch to another path. As long as I continue forward, there will always be a path to my destination. Li Mabai didn't look too disappointed. He sorted out his emotions and said to Zhou, according to our previous agreement, it's your turn now. If you don't gain anything, I hope you can give them a chance. Chapter 783. Sure. Zhou nodded in agreement. If he couldn't kill this guardian, there was no harm in letting others give it a try. However, Zhou didn't immediately take action. He had a nagging feeling that the calabash was a hidden danger. Now that the chick was suppressing it, the calabash didn't dare act rashly. However, it would be troublesome if it released the goo inside when fighting the guardian. Wait a moment. I'll think of a way to pluck this calabash, Zhou said to Li Mabai and company. Butterfly joked, just drip some blood on the cocoon. The calabash isn't a problem. There's no need to go through so much trouble, right? Are you afraid that you won't be recognized by the guardian? Zhou didn't answer her, as he continued studying the calabash in front of him. This calabash was indeed a good item. It could even control mythical goo. Furthermore, it could make them kill each other and evolve by devouring each other. This was actually very similar to the phone's companion beast fusion function. However, it was a more primitive and crude version. It wasn't as modern as the phone's fusion function. Zhou thought to himself, if I can get this calabash back, it will be explainable if I take out some strange fusion pets in the future. But how can I get this calabash back? Is this thing considered a dimensional creature? If I slash the calabash off, will it drop a companion egg? The chick pecked and clawed at the calabash, but the effects weren't good. Even its golden flames didn't have much effect on the calabash. Zhou slashed a few times with the golden overlord sword. Although he could split the calabash, the space inside the calabash seemed to have the characteristic of spatial extension. When the sword beam rushed in, it gradually dissipated. It didn't cause too much damage. Furthermore, the calabash could rapidly recover. Since I can't slash the calabash, I'll remove its roots. Zhou glanced at the roots of the calabash vine and planned on attacking from there. The golden overlord sword slashed down with an indomitable sword beam. Before the sword beam could slash at the roots of the calabash vine, the calabash suddenly spat out more than 10 goo. Goo of all shapes and sizes rushed at Zhou. Some were as small as sesame seeds, while others were as big as ferocious beasts. Furthermore, their abilities were different. Everyone was shocked. They never expected there to be so many Gu in the calabash. Gu Shan Shui and Li Mabai reflexively prepared to fight. A bird's cry sounded as the chick craned its neck and let out a long cry. The Gu that were charging at Zhou immediately went limp from fright and fell from the sky as though they were paralyzed. Only the few mythical Gu charged at Zhou. However, from the trembling of their bodies, it was clear that they were extremely afraid. It was only because they were controlled by the calabash that they had no choice but to charge over. When the little bird saw that they still dared to rush over, it immediately became furious. It flapped its wings and leaped up, rushing over to peck at those Gu insects. The chick's strength wasn't as strong as the mythical Gu, but for some reason, the mythical Gu didn't dare resist. They were pecked by the chick until they bled profusely. A small mythical Gu was swallowed by the chick. The chick wasn't afraid of the Gu parasitizing in its body at all. Instantly, it looked mighty as though an emperor was dealing with a group of eunuchs. The eunuchs didn't dare fight back. It's no wonder Worm Dugu said that phoenixes are the nemesis of Gu. After Gu Shan Shui saw the chick, he treated it like a god. This phoenix's restraints on Gu are just too strong. Zhou originally imagined that there would be a fierce battle, but from the looks of it, there was no need for him to do anything. The chick could finish off all the Gu by itself. Li Mabai looked at the mighty chick and seemed to be in thought. It looked like he had guessed the chick's origins. It's no wonder Zhou dared to take the risk to come to the South District. So he has such a divine item on him. Li Mabai was enlightened. He knew that it wasn't because he had moved Zhou, but because Zhou had the confidence to protect his life, which was why he had followed him to the Valley of No Return. The chick unleashed its might. In a short while, it swallowed more than 10 Gu. Its body clearly swelled up as its stomach swelled. Zhou suddenly recalled that the antelope had brought the chick up Mount Laojuan's golden peak. After returning, the chick was as fat as a ball. Back then, Zhou was puzzled as to why the chick had gained so much weight. Now that he thought about it, the chick must have obtained some benefits from Mount Laojuan's golden peak. It's no wonder I felt that the chick seemed to have grown a lot after that. So it wasn't because of time, but because it swallowed some benefits. Zhou now understood why the phoenix had given him the chick back then. This thing had eaten several mythical Gu and nearly 10 epic Gu, but it was only as fat as a ball. It didn't immediately grow up. If he wanted to raise it to adulthood, he didn't know how many resources he would have to expend. The phoenix probably couldn't afford to raise so many baby phoenixes, so it wanted to help it choose a good family to eat and stay for free. For some reason, it chose him. After losing all the Gu, the calabash trembled. However, it was only a calabash after all. It couldn't escape like animal-type dimensional creatures. Zhou didn't stand on ceremony as he drew his sword and slashed. With a few strikes, he severed the roots of the calabash vine. The moment the calabash's roots were severed, the calabash vine immediately withered. The bluish-gray leaves also shrank and fell. The color of the calabash gradually turned light gray before finally turning grayish-white. Zhou slashed at the calabash vine that had also turned grayish-white. The calabash vine turned to dust, leaving only the calabash intact. Zhou extended his hand and sucked the calabash into his hand. He squeezed it hard and realized that the calabash was still as hard as before. It didn't turn to powder like the vines and leaves. Although the calabash was still there was no vitality on it. Zhou didn't know if the calabash could still be used, so he put it away first. The chick was so full that it staggered as it walked. It looked like it would fall to the ground and roll away at any moment. Retreat a little. I'm going to take action, Zhou said to Li Mabai and company. The guardians were generally very strong. Even if Zhou could kill the guardian inside, there would definitely be a huge battle. In order not to implicate them, he got them to retreat a little in advance to prevent them from escaping in time. It's just a drop of blood. There's no need to go through so much trouble, right? Butterfly said, "Let's go." Li Mabai seemed to notice something as he instructed Butterfly and mute to retreat with him. Although Gu Shanshu didn't know why Zhou Wen wanted them to retreat, he still retreated with Gu Lu and Gu He. Chapter 784. Could it be that Zhou Wen is thin-skinned and afraid of being mocked by us if he fails? Butterfly said as she walked. I'm afraid it's not that simple. Li Mabai guessed something, but he didn't know what Zhou Wen was going to do. From his point of view, Zhou Wen definitely wouldn't just drip a blood contract. It was very likely that he would use some method to increase the success rate of the contract. In fact, Li Mabai had previously thought of a similar method. However, because he had transferred the evil King Gu life soul to Li Xian, his physique was much weaker. He didn't dare to use some of the methods he could use in the past, so he gave up on the idea of using some special methods. Li Mabai was very interested in what method Zhou Wen wanted to use. He hoped that Zhou Wen could succeed. This way, he could use Zhou Wen's method as a reference. He still had a chance in the future. When they were far enough away, Zhou Wen moved as well. However, he didn't walk towards the cocoon of the guardian. Instead, he also distanced himself from it. However, as he distanced himself, he summoned Tyrant Behemoth. Boom! Tyrant Behemoth was more than 3 meters tall, but its body was heavier than steel. When it landed in the cave, it caused the entire cave to tremble. That's Tyrant Behemoth. Tyrant Behemoth ranked 4th. That's actually Zhou Wen's companion beast. Butterfly immediately cried out in surprise when she saw Tyrant Behemoth. Gu Lu and company were also alarmed as their eyes nearly popped out. Tyrant Behemoth's name was probably known to everyone. Many experts in the Federation were trying to find out who Tyrant Behemoth's owner was, but they never expected it to be Zhou Wen's companion beast. Previously, Gu Lu thought that Zhou Wen was young and frivolous, but now, with his terrifying pets, he was probably not weaker than the top experts from the Dugu family. He did have the right to be frivolous. What does he want to do by summoning Tyrant Behemoth? Li Mabai looked at Zhou Wen in surprise. He felt that something was amiss. Zhou Wen didn't seem to be using any means to contract the guardian. Indeed, under everyone's horrified gazes, Tyrant Behemoth roared and punched the cocoon of the guardian. He wants to kill the protector and not form a contract with it? Butterfly's eyes widened in disbelief. This was beyond her imagination. Boom! Tyrant Behemoth shattered the gray cocoon with a punch, revealing the guardian inside. As for Zhou Wen, he had already used the invisibility cloak to hide himself. At the same time, he summoned demonic neonate and hugged her in his arms, using the invisibility cloak to cover her. After all, reality wasn't a game where everything was over once he died. Therefore, Zhou Wen was much more careful than usual. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't find a guardian to kill in the game, he wouldn't have taken the risk in reality. Even in his invisible state, Zhou Wen had no intention of approaching the guardian. He wanted to figure out what abilities the guardian had. The guardian in the gray cocoon was covered in black insect armor. It had ant-like antennae on its head, cicada-like wings on its back, eyes like snakes, and 4 scorpion-like tails on its back. This guardian looked like a humanoid goo, and its body was filled with an evil aura. Just as Tyrant Behemoth's fist was about to strike the guardian's figure suddenly turned blurry. Tyrant Behemoth's fist only hit an illusion. Looking up, he saw the guardian standing upside down at the top of the cave like a bat. Its snake-like eyes stared at Tyrant Behemoth. The fingers on its hands spread open as thin silk blades crisscrossed like spider webs, enveloping Tyrant Behemoth below. Tyrant Behemoth exerted strength in its feet and shattered the rocks. Its body soared into the air and raised its fist to strike the spiderweb in the air, hoping to blast it and the guardian to death. However, when his fist struck the spiderweb-like silk blades, they didn't suffer any force at all. It was as though he had punched the air. As for the silk blades, they retracted and wrapped around Tyrant Behemoth's body. Tyrant Behemoth was like a huge fish that had fallen into a fishing net. The more it struggled, the tighter the thin silk blades wrapped around it. Furthermore, the thin silk blades had very strong elasticity. Tyrant Behemoth unleashed its strength in an attempt to break the thin silk blades, but all it could do was widen the thin silk net blades a little. When Tyrant Behemoth relaxed its strength, the thin silk net blades wrapped even tighter. The Guardian, who was standing upside down at the top of the cave, flashed and appeared behind Tyrant Behemoth as though it had teleported. Its barbed palms and feet hooked on a Tyrant Behemoth's back as it opened its mouth. The tongue in its mouth was like a blood-colored arrow that stabbed into Tyrant Behemoth's neck. Roar! Tyrant Behemoth directly activated absolute strength, but the powerful strength failed to help it tear apart the silk blades. It pushed open the net blades, but it was unable to tear them apart. Guardians are indeed stronger than mythical creatures. A mythical companion beast like Tyrant Behemoth is basically the pinnacle of mythical creatures, but it's still inferior to a guardian. Zhou will probably suffer greatly this time. Master, let's quickly retreat, Butterfly said to Li Mabai. Li Mabai didn't answer as he searched his surroundings, but he didn't seem to find a target. He frowned and asked, "Where did Zhou go?" Everyone was taken aback. Their gazes were attracted by Tyrant Behemoth and the Guardian. They were watching the battle and didn't notice Zhou's whereabouts. He turned his head and looked around, but he didn't see Zhou. He only saw a gold and white bird on a rock not far away, watching Tyrant Behemoth and the Guardian battle. At that moment, Zhou was wearing the invisibility cloak and had activated Sai of the King. Not long after, his strength reached the level of activating Slaughterer. Without any hesitation, he activated the Wheel of Destiny of the invisibility cloak and secretly approached the Guardian with demonic neonate. The invisibility power of the invisibility cloak was just too useful. The Guardian didn't discover the invisible Zhou. He lay on Tyrant Behemoth's back and used his tongue to devour the energy in Tyrant Behemoth's body. Zhou had already arrived behind it, but it still didn't notice him. Without any hesitation, Zhou summoned Light Concealment Sword and slashed at the Guardian's neck with immortal slaying. Almost at the same time, Demonic Neonate in his arms unsheathed her demonic sword and slashed at the Guardian's neck. The two swords, one on the left and one on the right, sliced down like a pair of scissors. The distance was too close, so the Guardian had no room to react. Li Mabai and company didn't discover Zhou's traces, but they suddenly heard a tragic cry. When they turned their heads, they realized that Zhou was floating in the air. As for the Guardian's head, it had already been chopped off and fell to the ground. Plop! The Guardian's headless corpse fell from the sky and fell to the ground. The thin net blades on Tyrant Behemoth's body vanished as well. Zhou carefully floated in the air and flung his palm as though he was shaking off the blood on his palm. Butterfly, Gulu, and company were already shocked speechless. This was because they couldn't see the invisible Light Concealment Sword. They imagined that Zhou had beheaded the Guardian. Chapter 785. Is this person a devil? Butterfly looked at Zhou and felt a chill run down her spine. They had gone through so much trouble to come here so that they could sign a contract with the Guardian and obtain greater strength. As for Zhou, he had actually chopped off the Guardian's head with one palm. Although they knew that this person wasn't an enemy, the difference in strength still left them in despair. They even trembled. However, Li Mabai didn't think so. His eyes burned as he stared intently at Zhou as though he had discovered a new continent. So the path can be taken this way? Li Mabai felt as though there was a ball of fire burning in his body. There was no fire in Zhou's body, but as the Guardian's body disintegrated and vanished, a force surged into his body, causing Slaughterer's life soul to automatically switch out. After absorbing the energy, it became stronger. To Zhou's disappointment, although Slaughterer was becoming stronger, it failed to advance to a perfect body even after the energy was completely absorbed. How many Guardians do I have to kill before Slaughterer can advance to a perfect body? Zhou sighed inwardly. Li Mabai, Gu Shanshui, and company had already returned. Zhou said, "Sorry, I can't give you a chance to try." Li Mabai smiled and said, "It's fine. That's not important. If it's convenient, can you tell me why you killed the Guardian? Why didn't you sign a contract with him? There's no need for a contract. Zhou couldn't explain too much. That's right. You really don't need it anymore, Li Mabai said. Butterfly, Gulu, and company felt that Zhou Wen's words were too arrogant, but when they thought of the scene of the Guardian's head falling off, they felt powerless to refute him. Since we're already here, why don't we go to the entrance of the Valley of No Return to take a look? Zhou Wen was still wondering if he could find the tiny palm symbol in the Valley of No Return. With the Valley of No Return, he would have a place to grind for companion beasts like Gu in the future. All right, with you around, the Valley of No Return probably won't be able to retain anyone. It's good to broaden your horizons, Li Mabai said with a smile. I'm just taking a look from the outside. I don't plan on entering. Zhou Wen shook his head. Although the chick could suppress the Gu, it hadn't grown up yet. If there were too many Gu, it wouldn't be able to take care of them. Or perhaps there were Gu that weren't afraid of the bird. If they really went all out, the bird might not be able to defeat a mythical Gu. Zhou Wen was very surprised that the chick could kill those mythical Gu. He didn't know if it was because of the noble phoenix bloodline in the chick or if it had some special power. Furthermore, after using immortal slaying, Zhou Wen's strength had been depleted. His body was still in a weak state. Although he wasn't as miserable as when he used immortal slaying in the past, his combat strength had been greatly affected. Zhou Wen didn't wish to take the risk at such a time. The group exited the underground cave and arrived at the outskirts of the Valley of No Return. Zhou Wen saw that there were layers of valleys here. There was a valley within a valley, but he didn't know how big the space inside was. He only heard from locals like Gu Shanshui that people who entered the Valley of No Return would most likely not return. That was why it was named the Valley of No Return. However, it wasn't that no one could come back alive. There were still people who came back alive. It was just that those people didn't go deep into the valley. Most of them just wandered around the entrance of the valley before coming out. Zhou Wen only wanted to wander around the valley's entrance to find the tiny palm symbol, but he had no intention of entering. His luck seemed to be surprisingly good. After circling the valley for a while, Zhou Wen found the extremely inconspicuous palm symbol on a mountain wall. The tiny palm symbol was covered in dense grass and was covered in moss. If Zhou Wen didn't have Truth Listener's ability, he wouldn't have discovered it. He snapped a picture with his mysterious phone, and the word downloading appeared on the screen, making Zhou Wen heave a sigh of relief. I've gained quite a lot this time. I downloaded the Valley of No Return dungeon, killed a Guardian, and got the chick to eat quite a number of Gu. I reckon it should be able to grow a little after digesting it, right? Zhou Wen felt that he hadn't come for nothing. However, Li Mabai's trip had been in vain. He hadn't obtained any benefits. Since Gu Shanshui wanted to go to Chiang Rai to catch corpse bugs, Zhou Wen could only accompany him to Chiang Rai. Li Mabai thought for a moment and said, Master Gu, if you don't mind, let's go and take a look. Li, it's naturally for the best if you can come along. Gu Shanshui happily accepted. Everyone walked along the Flower River towards Chiang Rai. After walking 200 to 300 kilometers, they saw a flower of life that hadn't withered. Zhou Wen rode the great Might Vidra bull at the back of the team as he played with his phone. The Valley of No Return dungeon had been downloaded, so Zhou Wen entered to familiarize himself with the environment. The Valley of No Return was actually surrounded by mountains. Only a sliver of sky between the mountains could one enter. The mountain walls on both sides were very close, allowing only one person to pass through. The blood-colored avatar walked in sideways, as Truth Listener's ability was constantly activated. At the same time, he switched his essence energy art to the small perfection of wisdom. With the augmentation of the 8 perfections Wisdom Life Providence and the Supreme Hell King Life Soul, Zhou Wen's senses became extremely sharp. Even without using Truth Listener, he could see everything clearly. After walking for a short while, Zhou Wen discovered a problem. There were many tiny holes on the rock walls on both sides. As the holes were too small, one would only mistake them for the patterns on the stone walls with the naked eye. However, Zhou Wen could tell that they weren't the patterns of the stone, but tiny holes. In those tiny holes, there were tiny worms that would occasionally reveal their heads. As they were too small, if an ordinary person wasn't careful and allowed them to crawl onto their body, they would probably be able to burrow into their pores. The chick couldn't be brought into the game, so Zhou didn't have a good way to restrain these worms. All he could do was summon Tai Sui and see if it would eat these worms. Although Tai Sui wasn't very interested in these worms, it still devoured them under Zhou Wen's orders. A large number of notifications appeared on the game screen. They were all notifications of killing mortal creatures. Occasionally, a notification of killing a legendary creature would pop up. There were very few items that dropped, so they were basically useless. With Tai Sui's help, Zhou passed through the sliver and arrived in the valley. As this was a chain of valleys, what Zhou could see was a semicircular valley that wasn't too big. Inside was a grassland that looked verdant and delightful. However, if one had extraordinary vision, they would discover that there were many green caterpillars in the grass. They almost fused with the grass, making it difficult to distinguish their figures. Zhou summoned Fire Furnace Queen and turned the grass into a sea of fire. Then, notifications of killing legendary green-furred goo kept popping up. There seemed to be quite a number of goo. This is a good place to grind. I wonder if there will be groups of epic goo inside? Zhou had already seen the notification that a green-furred goo had dropped a companion egg. Chapter 786. A large number of green-haired goo were killed, dropping more than 10 green-haired goo companion eggs and quite a number of dimensional crystals. As he walked deeper into the valley, it became narrower again. Further in, there was another small valley in the shape of a horse's hoof. It was even smaller than the valley in front. The terrain of this valley was much lower. The ground was completely covered by clear water. The water level was very shallow, barely reaching Zhou Wen's calf. He could see to the bottom at a glance. There were many aquatic plants growing in the water, making it look very beautiful. It was as clean as a paradise. However, in Zhou Wen's eyes, such a beautiful and clean place wasn't that beautiful. There were many leech-like goo on the rocks and aquatic plants at the bottom of the water. If he rashly entered the water, he would probably be sucked dry of his blood. Zhou Wen summoned the water snake companion beast he had previously obtained. This was a water elemental snake from the island where the six-winged guardian dragon was. Its entire body was condensed from water, so it naturally wasn't afraid of poison or blood-sucking abilities. After it entered the water, it directly devoured the leeches. When the leeches entered its body, they were immediately sucked dry of their water, turning into small balls of jerky. Killed legendary creature, leech goo. Notifications constantly popped up on the phone screen. The water snakes swam quickly in the water, and wherever it passed, the leech goo were sucked dry of their water. It's no wonder so many people enter the Valley of No Return. Not only are there many types of dimensional creatures here, but their abilities are also extremely sinister. If I'm not careful, I'll be hit. It's not easy to leave alive. Zhou Wen wasn't excited about the leech goo. He didn't get the water snake to continue its slaughter. He flew into the air and headed for the next valley. The valley in front of him branched off. One path led to the left, while the other led to the right. Zhou Wen chose the left path and entered the next valley. This valley was clearly much larger than the previous one. The water in the valley in front flowed out from here. He could see a waterfall flowing inside the valley. There were still many leech goo in the water. However, apart from the leech goo, he could also see black tadpoles swimming around. Groups of tadpoles could be seen everywhere in the water. However, these tadpoles were extremely large. He estimated that he could only carry one tadpole with both hands. Zhou Wen was somewhat curious as to what goo the tadpoles were, so he got the water snake to rush towards the tadpoles. Just like before, the water snake swallowed the tadpoles, wanting to suck all the water in their bodies. But who knew that after the tadpoles were swallowed, their bodies would immediately explode, forcibly blowing up the water snake's body. After the explosion, the tadpoles did not die, but turned into a group of small tadpoles, still swimming in the water. The water snake's body was originally formed from water. After it was blown apart, it quickly condensed again and devoured a large number of tadpoles. The little tadpoles exploded again, blowing up the water snake's body. At the same time, it turned into even more little tadpoles. The number of tadpoles kept increasing, and they became smaller and smaller. However, there was no sign of death. After a few more times, the tadpoles had already become the size of sesame seeds, and it seemed like they could continue to explode. This dimensional creature is rather interesting. It can actually explode and split infinitely. I wonder how small it can be. Zhou got the water snake to continue devouring the tadpoles, hoping to see their limits. In the end, he realized that when the tadpoles became the size of needle tips, their bodies would explode, unable to continue splitting. It split a total of 5 times and self-destructed 5 times. Unfortunately, the power of the self-destruction is a little weak. Zhou silently did the math. Killed legendary creature, ancient tadpole. A notification appeared in-game. Although the skill was not bad, its level was a little low. The power of the self-destruction wasn't strong enough, so Zhou lost interest. However, soon, a rather special ancient tadpole attracted Zhou's attention. Among the group of ancient tadpoles, there was a dark gold tadpole. It was clearly different from the other tadpoles. Zhou got the water snake to rush over and devour the ancient tadpole. With a bang, a huge wave rose in the water. The water snake's body was blasted apart, and even the water elemental core in its body was shattered. It died just like that. The power of this self-destruction is a little too great. Zhou was somewhat surprised as he looked at the dark gold tadpole that had split apart in the water. He summoned another companion beast. This was the epic electric eel that Zhou had previously obtained in the underground pool city. After the electric eel rushed over, it spewed out an electric current. The dark gold tadpoles were struck by the electric current and immediately split apart and exploded. The electric eel was very fast as it quickly fled in the water, dodging the explosive power of the dark gold tadpole. Once again, it spewed out an electric current at the smaller dark gold tadpole. It was obvious that the dark gold tadpole was at the epic stage. Its explosive power was extremely powerful, enough to kill most epic creatures of the same level. Furthermore, after Zhou's experiments, he realized that these dark gold tadpoles could split and explode more than the ancient tadpoles from before. They could split and explode a total of 7 times. Ding! Killed dark gold ancient tadpole. Discover companion egg. Zhou realized that there was an additional dark gold companion egg in the water. Delighted, he picked it up and hatched it. Soon, there was an additional dark gold ancient tadpole in his companion beast column. Dark gold ancient tadpole. Epic life providence. Split life soul. Fusion strength. 34 speed. 31 constitution. 31 essence energy. 36 talent skill. Self-destruct companion form. Grenade. This thing is really special. Zhou summoned the dark gold ancient tadpole in-game, and a dark gold grenade appeared in his hand. Zhou threw it out. When the dark gold ancient tadpole landed in the water, it immediately exploded, splitting into a group of tiny dark gold ancient tadpole grenades. After the tiny dark gold ancient tadpoles were suppressed by the power, they continued to explode. However, it was different from the legendary ancient tadpoles. After the dark gold ancient tadpoles self-destructed, as long as they weren't suppressed by the power for a period of time, they would automatically gather together and become a large dark gold ancient tadpole again. The number of splits would also return to normal. Unless they self-destructed 7 times in a row, the dark gold ancient tadpole could slowly recover and wouldn't die. This is good stuff. If many dark gold ancient tadpoles self-destruct together, the power will be quite impressive. Zhou searched the valley again and realized that there would be a dark gold ancient tadpole in every group of ancient tadpoles. Zhou specifically targeted the dark gold ancient tadpoles, hoping to have more companion eggs drop. However, after killing more than 10 dark gold ancient tadpoles, no companion eggs dropped. Zhou had already arrived near the waterfall. Just as he was about to continue searching, he discovered an especially huge ancient tadpole in the pool beneath the waterfall. Chapter 787. The tadpole was more than a meter long, and its head was dozens of centimeters in diameter. When it swung its tail, it stirred the water, creating tiny vortexes. Its body was relatively light in color. It wasn't as black as the legendary ancient tadpole, nor did it emit a golden glow like the epic dark gold ancient tadpole. It was a relatively light gray that leaned toward white. When Jobai saw it, it had already discovered the electric eel. With a flick of its tail, it tore through the waves like a torpedo and quickly slammed into the electric eel. The electric eel launched an electric attack, but when the electric current struck the giant tadpole, it didn't explode. Boom! The giant tadpole collided with the electric current and slammed into the electric eel. Then, Zhou saw a terrifying explosion detonate all the ancient tadpoles in the valley. The explosion of the giant tadpole was already very terrifying. Furthermore, the tadpoles that split off from the explosion slammed into the other epic and legendary tadpoles, constantly producing a chain explosion. Zhou realized that something was amiss as he condensed a protective essence energy skill to resist the explosion. However, the terrifying explosion blasted apart the blood-colored avatar's protective essence energy and penetrated its armor. The tadpole that had burrowed into its body exploded again. After a series of explosions, the blood-colored avatar died. Isn't this explosion a little too powerful? Zhou was somewhat alarmed. The tadpole was clearly a mythical existence. It exploded and split again, causing all the ancient tadpoles in the valley to explode. Unless it was a mythical creature with extremely strong defense, it was impossible to withstand it. After entering the game again, Zhou was obedient this time. He didn't enter himself and summoned Tyrant Behemoth to rush into the valley where the mythical tadpole was. Soon, Zhou heard a chain explosion outside the valley. The explosion caused the water in the valley to splatter everywhere as the water level in the valley outside rose significantly. After a while, the explosions finally stopped. Zhou roughly counted that there were a total of 9 intense explosions. It was likely that the mythical tadpole had experienced 9 splits and explosions. On the game screen, the news of the death of various ancient tadpoles had already flooded the screen. The last message was especially eye-catching. Killed mythical creature, ancient splitting tadpole. Discovered companion egg. Zhou entered the valley and saw Tyrant Behemoth standing in the water with many wounds on its body. He couldn't help but be slightly alarmed. Despite using absolute strength, Tyrant Behemoth was still injured by the explosion. Although it was only a minor injury, the ancient splitting tadpole's self-destruction was already extremely terrifying. The companion egg landed in the water. Apart from the mythical companion egg, there were also many dimensional crystals and tiny companion eggs scattered in the water. They were likely left behind by the legendary and epic tadpoles. Zhou first picked up the mythical companion egg and chose to hatch it. Soon, the mythical ancient splitting tadpole appeared in the pet bar. It looked no different from before. Ancient splitting tadpole, mythical, life providence, split life soul, fusion wheel of fortune, death parasite. Strength, 81 speed, 76 constitution, 77 essence energy, 81 innate skill, self-destruct companion form, grenade. The ancient splitting tadpole's attributes were already quite terrifying. Both of its attributes had reached a peak of 81 points. It was just that he did not know what kind of ability parasitic death had. However, just the 9 splits and the ability to self-destruct was already rather terrifying. To be able to injure Tyrant Behemoth in its absolute strength state was already very powerful. Unfortunately, the ancient splitting tadpole will really die once it self-destructs 9 times. I can't use it casually outside the game, but there's no need to worry about it in-game. Zhou thought of Explosive Fiend Man, who also had the ability to self-destruct. His self-destruct was even more ferocious. He could only self-destruct once. He didn't even have a second chance. The splitting tadpole could self-destruct at least 9 times. As long as it didn't self-destruct 9 times in a row, it wouldn't really die. it was still possible to control it and use it in reality. I wonder if I can fuse splitting tadpole with explosive fiend man. If explosive fiend man also has such a splitting ability. Zhou didn't dare continue thinking. Just the thought of explosive fiend man self-destructing and splitting into smaller explosive fiend men that would then explode everywhere left his scalp tingling. Looking at the compatibility between explosive fiend man and splitting tadpole, he realized that it was only a pathetic 24%. If he fused them, the chances of failure were close to 80%. Although they both have the ability to self-destruct, it looks like the two aren't the same type. Zhou had no choice but to dismiss the idea of fusion. The Valley of No Return was already a dead end. There was no way in, so Zhou had no choice but to retreat to the fork and walk towards the valley on the right to see what was inside. The valley on the right was completely different from the valley on the left. After entering the valley on the right, the temperature suddenly dropped. After taking a few steps, frost and snow appeared on the ground. The valley on the right was basically a snow valley. The deeper he went, the thicker the snow became. After taking a few steps, the phone screen suddenly turned black. The blood-colored avatar had died for some reason. From the looks of it, there's something wrong with the snow. Zhou roughly understood the problem. However, for his supreme Hell King life soul to not discover the problem, the thing in the snow was definitely not simple. Just as he was about to drip his blood to respawn and continue grinding in the Valley of No Return, he suddenly heard Gu Shanshui say, "We've reached the end of the Flower River. In another 5 kilometers, we'll reach the periphery of Chiang Rai." Before the dimensional storms, this area was the intersection of 3 countries. It's the famous Golden Triangle. It used to be very chaotic, and it's not a good place now. Not only are there many dimensional zones, but there are also all sorts of evil essence energy arts. Gu, Kumin Thong, black magic, witchcraft, Buddhist scriptures, and the essence energy arts of the other zones can be seen here. It's very chaotic. Furthermore, it's very easy for something to happen. You have to be careful here. It's best not to eat or take other people's things. Gu Shanshui paused for a moment before continuing. Chiang Rai is in this area. Now, there are 3 famous families in Chiang Rai. The biggest one is the Shao family. Not only are the Shao family proficient in Buddha plaques and Kumin Thong, but they also have deep attainments in Gu and black magic. Legend has it that their family has a mythical Kumin Thong that's extremely powerful. Anyone who provokes their family doesn't have a good ending. Isn't Kumin Thong a life soul? Zhou when asked in puzzlement. Gu Shanshui explained, Kumin Thong was originally a witchcraft to nurture a spirit infant. It's divided into heaven child, earth child, and man child. After the dimensional storms, someone used the method of nurturing Kumin Thong to create a rapid life soul. They used the nurtured Kumin Thong as their life soul. Chapter 788. With Gu Shanshui leading the way, they quickly arrived at Chiang Rai. Gu Shanshui found a place to stay. The place he wanted to go was near Chiang Rai. Chiang Rai was somewhat different from Mong Sat. There were many people like Gu Shanshui who had tattoos and Buddha plaques. After dinner, Li Ma Bai, Butterfly, and company went out to stroll around Chiang Rai. As for Zhou, he stayed at his place with no intention of leaving. As Chiang Rai's dimensional zones weren't in the city, he couldn't see them even if he left. Mr. Zhou, we're going to catch the bookworm tomorrow. There are some things I need to clarify today to prevent any trouble later, Gu Shanshui said when he came to Zhou Wen's room. Master Gu, please speak. Zhou Wen let Gu Shanshui in. The place I'm going to catch the corpse bug is called Dragon Corpse River. Legend has it that a dragon once died there. I don't know if it's true or not, but Dragon Corpse Valley is very dangerous. The Gu inside are at least at the epic stage. Occasionally, mythical Gu will appear. Even the members of the Dugu family have to be careful when entering Dragon Corpse Valley. After a pause, Gu Shanshui continued. The corpse bug I want to catch is in the most dangerous area of Dragon Corpse River. There are many taboos inside. Furthermore, that corpse bug is very special. I suspect that the corpse bug is a mythical goo born from the dragon corpse. When the time comes, even with the help of the phoenix divine bird, it probably won't be easy to subdue it. We can't be careless. Following that, Gu Shanshui took out a self-made map and explained the situation to Zhou Wen in detail. Not many people knew of the existence of the corpse bug. Furthermore, it wasn't easy to lure it out. It required some special means. Gu Shanshui explained his plan and means in detail so that Zhou Wen could help him when the time came. Mr. Zhou, only the two of us know the secret of the corpse bug. Don't leak it. Otherwise, it will definitely cause others to vie for it, Gu Shanshui exhorted. Master Gu, don't worry. I won't spread this matter, Zhou Wen said. That's good. Then I won't disturb your rest, Mr. Zhou. Gu Shanshui bade farewell and left. Zhou Wen continued grinding dungeons. The 9 black dragons in the deer-chasing underground sea had already respawned. Zhou Wen went to grind the 9 dragons again. Due to his previous experience, it went very smoothly this time. After killing the black dragon with the Wu Dragon Pearl, the other 8 black dragons immediately became scattered. They could only be slaughtered by Zhou Wen's companion beasts. When he killed the 6th black dragon, Zhou Wen heard a ding as a black companion egg dropped. Companion egg! Zhou Wen was overjoyed as he turned invisible and picked up the companion egg to check its stats. Demon Blood True Dragon, Kuin Mythical Life Providence, Demon Dragon Bloodline, Incomplete, Life Spirit, Kunlun, Incomplete, Wheel of Fortune, Draconic Realm, Incomplete, Strength, 80 Speed, 80 Constitution, 80 Essence Energy, 80 Innate Skills, Dragon Breath, Devil Dragon Transformation, Devil Dragon True Body, Dragon Rage. Companion Form, Dragon Scale Armor, Incomplete. Why are there so many missing parts? Zhou Wen couldn't help but be disappointed when he saw the Demon Blood True Dragon. Its Life Providence, Life Soul, Wheel of Fortune, and Companion Form were all incomplete. Its stats were only 80. Could it be that I have to gather all 9 black dragons to unleash the might of the Demon Blood True Dragon? Zhou Wen hatched the Demon Blood True Dragon and summoned it in its companion form. Although the Dragon Scale Armor was incomplete, it was a complete set of Dragon Scale Armor when it was summoned. It enveloped the blood-colored avatar's entire body, making it impossible to tell how it was incomplete. Regardless, it's finally a mythical armor. Zhou Wen looked at the black dragon scale armor on the blood-colored avatar. It looked like its defense was pretty good. Just as Zhou Wen was sizing up the dragon scale armor, he suddenly heard a familiar voice coming from the nearby corridor. Old Worm, can you do it? Of course. It was an accident this time. I'll definitely be able to capture that mythical goo the next time I bring you there. I've heard that countless times. Can't you use something new? Don't worry. I have my own plans. Trust your master. Don't. You're not my master yet. It's only a matter of time. I really suspect that you are for the Duga family. It's so difficult to capture a mythical goo. If it wasn't for the fact that Honey is so beautiful and doesn't look like a bad person, I would really suspect that you are a cheat. Worm Dugu and Li Xian. Zhou Wen listened carefully for a while and immediately knew who the two people were. Zhou Wen hurriedly opened the door and walked out. Indeed, he saw Worm Dugu and Li Xian talking as they walked. They were about to enter the room. Li Xian. Zhou Wen hurriedly stopped Li Xian. Zhou Wen, why are you here? Li Xian was pleasantly surprised when he saw Zhou Wen. He ran over and hugged Zhou Wen's shoulder. As expected of my good brother, you came to look for me because you were worried when you heard that I came to the South District, right? You aren't a chick. What's there to worry about? I came to Chiang Rai for something. I didn't know you were here, Zhou Wen said. Brother, you really don't know how to speak. Do you know that your words hurt my young heart? Li Xian held his chest with his hand, looking so pained that he couldn't breathe. Your second brother is here, too. Zhou Wen ignored him and continued. After Zhou Wen said that, he couldn't help but be taken aback. Li Mabai didn't need to come to Chiang Rai, but he had followed. Zhou Wen wondered if he knew that Li Xian was in Chiang Rai. However, on second thought, it didn't seem likely. No one knew where Li Xian had gone with Worm Dugu. When Li Xian heard that Li Mabai was here, The smile on his face vanished as his expression turned solemn. "What's he doing here?" Li Xian asked. Zhou recounted how Li Mabai had invited him to the Valley of No Return to find the guardian cocoon. When Li Xian heard that Li Mabai had failed the contract, his expression darkened slightly. From the looks of it, he still minded the matter of Li Mabai transferring his life soul to him. "By the way, there's one more thing I want to tell you." Zhou wanted to tell Li Xian about Xia Zhihuang. Li Xian's elder brother had very likely been harmed by Xia Zhihuang. Now that Xia Zhihuang was dead, this matter actually had nothing to do with the Xia family. There was no need for Li Xian to risk his life against the Xia family. "Eldest disciple, have you thought it through and specially came to acknowledge me as your master?" Worm Dugu walked over at that moment and said to Zhou Wan with a smile. His gaze was still constantly sizing up the chick on Zhou Wan's shoulder. "No," Zhou Wan answered. "Ahem, don't be shy. Li Xian has already agreed to be my disciple, but I'm a very clear person. I took a fancy to you first, so you are my eldest disciple. This seniority can't be messed up," Worm Dugu said with a smile, without changing his expression. "Don't spout nonsense. I didn't agree to be your disciple. You have to beat me in a bet. Perhaps if you lose the bet, you'll have to take me as your master in the future. When that happens, you'll have to call old Zhou Uncle Master," Li Xian said with a twitch of his lips. "What's going on?" Zhou Wan asked Li Xian in puzzlement. Chapter 789. Worm Dugu rushed to say, "I think Li Xian's talent is passable, so I plan on taking him in as my disciple. You can also consider it. It's not too late to regret becoming my eldest disciple." Zhou Wan immediately understood what was going on. Li Xian's life soul had fused with Li Mabai's evil king Gu, so he had a portion of the Gu's characteristics. Worm Dugu must have taken a fancy to this, so he wanted to take Li Xian in as his disciple. However, Li Xian and Zhou Wan were good friends. Worm Dugu was afraid that Li Xian would find it too embarrassing if he knew that he wanted to take Zhou Wan as his master. Therefore, he refused to acknowledge him. "Come on. I wonder who stood at Zhou Wan's dorm door and kept saying that he wanted to find master." Li Xian curled his lips and said, "Don't worry. Li Xian, am a man of my word. As long as you can beat me in the bet, I'll definitely take you as my master. However, if you lose..." To Zhou Wan's surprise, Li Xian already knew that Worm Dugu wanted to take him as his master. "Stop. It's impossible for me, Worm Dugu, to lose," Worm Dugu immediately said. Zhou Wan asked Li Xian what was going on. After Li Xian explained the matter in detail, Zhou Wan knew why Worm Dugu had persuaded Li Xian to come to the South District. After Zhou Wan left, Worm Dugu happened to bump into Li Xian, who had gone to Zhou Wan's place to get something. The two of them had a verbal conflict. Worm Dugu wanted to use Gu to deal with Li Xian, but as Gu didn't dare approach Li Xian. This alarmed Worm Dugu. After many tests, Worm Dugu realized that Li Xian's life soul was the nemesis of Gu. Raising a phoenix was also to restrain Gu, and Li Xian himself could restrain all sorts of Gu. With such a talent, Worm Dugu was tempted. He insisted on making Li Xian his disciple and learn how to rear Gu from him. Li Xian was naturally unwilling, but Worm Dugu didn't give up. He showed Li Xian the magical effects of many Gu and even said that he wanted to help Li Xian capture mythical Gu. When Li Xian saw the strange and magical abilities of the Gu, he was really tempted. However, because Worm Dugu wanted to take Zhou Wan as his master from the beginning, Li Xian wasn't too willing to be his disciple. Therefore, he made a bet with Worm Dugu. If Worm Dugu could capture the famous ice silkworm Gu King, Li Xian would agree to be his disciple and learn how to rear Gu from him. The ice silkworm Gu King would be a gift from Worm Dugu to his disciple. If Worm Dugu couldn't capture the ice silkworm Gu King, he would have to take Li Xian as his master and teach him how to rear Gu. Regardless of whether he wins or loses, Li Xian won't suffer a loss. For Worm Dugu to be willing to suffer such a huge loss, does he really think highly of Li Xian, or does he have other motives? Zhou Wan thought to himself, momentarily unsure. If it weren't for someone causing trouble, I would have long captured the ice silkworm Gu King and taken him in as a disciple, Worm Dugu said. Li Xian curled his lips and said disdainfully, if someone hadn't barged in and diverted the ice silkworm Gu King's attention, I'm afraid we would have died there. To think you call yourself the best gu-rearing expert in the South District. How embarrassing. Li Xian recounted what had happened. Worm Dugu had originally taken Li Xian to capture the ice silkworm Gu King because he planned on using Li Xian's life soul to restrain the ice silkworm Gu King. With his abilities, he could capture it in one fell swoop. However, to his surprise, there wasn't one ice silkworm Gu King but two. When they trapped one ice silkworm Gu King and thought they were about to succeed, the other ice silkworm Gu King suddenly appeared, catching Worm Dugu off guard. The two of them nearly died there. Thankfully, a group of people happened to want to capture the ice silkworm Gu King. They diverted the attention of one of the ice silkworm Gu Kings, allowing them to escape. Now, that group of people is still setting up a trap to capture the ice silkworm Gu King. I think they are much better than this old man. I reckon they have already succeeded, Li Xian said. Bullsh *T. Do you think it's that easy to capture the ice silkworm Gu King? With those good-for-nothings from the Shao family, they won't be able to capture the ice silkworm Gu King in another 10 years. It's more likely they will all die there, Worm Dugu shouted as he jumped. Shao family? Which Shao family? Zhou Wen's heart stirred as he asked Worm Dugu. Which other Shao family can it be? Only in a small place like Chiang Rai can the Shao family gain a foothold, Worm Dugu said disdainfully. I heard that the Shao family is very powerful. Not only are they good at nurturing goo, but they also know how to use black magic and Kumanthong. The Shao family also has a mythical Kumanthong, Zhou said. Worm Dugu seemed to be very disdainful of the Shao family. When he heard that, he stroked his beard and said, there are many big shots who know black magic, Kumanthong, and Buddhaplax in the West District. It's impossible for the Shao family to have their turn. They can gain a foothold in Chiang Rai not because of their superb techniques, but because they don't abide by the rules and are ruthless. Do you know how the Shao family's mythical companion beast came about? Ow! Zhou Wen and Li Xian looked at Worm Dugu curiously. More than 20 years ago, there was a family in Chiang Rai. Both husband and wife raised goo. Furthermore, they were rather famous in the South District. They raised goo, but they never used them to harm others. Later on, the wife got pregnant. Ever since she got pregnant, there would often be wild goo bugs around her house. Those goo worms were guarding outside his house, but none of them entered. It was as if they were guarding something. The closer it was to the wife's due date, the more goo appeared near her house. There were even mythical goo. After taking a deep breath, Worm Dugu continued. Back then, everyone said that the child the wife was pregnant with was the reincarnation of the goo god, which was why the goo were protecting it. Although the goo wouldn't harm them, they caused a lot of trouble for the neighbors nearby. Therefore, the couple had no choice but to move to a remote place. Not long after, someone discovered that the couple had died tragically at home. The wife's abdomen had been sliced open, and the baby was nowhere to be seen. Zhou Wen and Li Xian shuddered when they heard that. They heard Worm Dugu continue. Most people believe that the goo harmed the couple and took away their child. However, our Dugu family has a disciple who has a good relationship with the couple. According to him, the Shao family's family head had a good relationship with the couple back then. When he went to meet the couple, he even met the Shao family's family head. Furthermore, more than a year after the couple's death, the Shao family produced a powerful Kumanthong. Furthermore, ever since then, the Shao family, who only knew Kumanthong and black magic, also began to rear goo. Don't you think this is too much of a coincidence? It's a coincidence, but it might not be related. Does your Dugu family have any evidence? Li Xian asked. If there was evidence, we would have wiped out the Shao family long ago. How could we have let them live until now? However, I think there's a high chance that it was done by the Shao family, Worm Dugu said. Zhou Wen felt that what Worm Dugu said made sense. Although he didn't know much about the Shao family, he had met Shao Si before. He knew how ruthless he was. He would definitely do such a thing. Wait, the Shao family wants Wang Chan. Don't tell me they want to use her to refine Kumanthong? Zhou Wen hurriedly asked Worm Dugu. Do babies have to be used to refine come thong? Can older people refine come thong? Generally speaking, children who die at the age of 0 to 12 can be used to create earth children and man children. That was the method of the past. The method now is even crueler. Wormduga didn't explain in detail. 0 to 12 years old? Zhou thought for a moment. Wang Chan looked like she was 11 or 12 years old. Furthermore, she had the goddess of misfortune life, Providence. That was unusual to begin with. So Gu. Chapter 790. If an 11 or 12-year-old child has already condensed a life providence, and it's very special, will it be helpful in refining come thong? Zhou asked again. I'm not too sure about that. After all, I specialize in nurturing Gu. I only know some basic knowledge about come thong. It's best you find a professional to ask, Wormduga said. Zhou chatted with them for a while before bidding farewell to Gu Shanshui. He wanted to figure out if Wang Chan's life providence would affect come thong. After knocking on Gu Shanshui's door, Zhou roughly explained the situation. However, he didn't mention the Xiao family or Wang Chan, apart from Heaven Child. Earth Child and Man Child are actually unorthodox. Typically speaking, one should use babies that die young or are aborted to make Earth children or man children. Only then will the resentment be greater and the spirituality be stronger. As a baby grows older, its spirituality will become weaker and weaker. The older it is, the less suitable it is to make come thong. 12 years old is the theoretical limit, but very few people will really use such an old child to make come thong, unless the child is very special and has a special life providence. It can be used to make some special evil come thong or come nay. After hearing Gu Shanshui's explanation, Zhou was even more certain that the Xiao family wanted Wang Chan because of the refinement of come thong. If that's the case, this Xiao family really deserves death. Zhou was somewhat angry. Zhou planned on visiting the Xiao family after returning from Dragon Corpse River to see if they really had such plans. If they really had such plans, Zhou didn't mind helping Wang Chan eliminate any future troubles. It could be considered a form of returning Wang Lu a favor. When Li Mabai returned, Zhou told him that Li Xian was here as well. Li Mabai only said indifferently that it had nothing to do with him before returning to his room. The next morning, Zhou, Gu Shanshui, Li Mabai, and company headed for Dragon Corpse River. After Li Xian and Wormduga made some preparations, they still had to capture the ice silkworm Gu King. Those without ability should just stay at home and wait for death. Why come out to court death? Li Mabai said coldly when Zhou and company parted ways with Li Xian. Li Xian didn't say a word and left with Wormduga. Zhou didn't know what to say. All he could do was pretend not to hear and walk ahead with Gu Shanshui. The Dragon Corpse River was named after a dragon was buried in the river. Before the dimensional storms, this was only a legend. No one had really seen a dragon corpse or dragon skeleton. However, after the dimensional storms, Dragon Corpse River became a dimensional zone with many taboos. For example, after entering the Dragon Corpse River, one must not touch the water of the Dragon Corpse River. Otherwise, one would turn into a zombie. Also, one couldn't fly on the Dragon Corpse River, and they couldn't drip their blood into the river. Also, women who were on their menstrual cycle couldn't enter the Dragon Corpse River. Therefore, Zhou and company could only enter the Dragon Corpse River by boat. The boat they took was bought by Gu Shanshui from a nearby family. According to Gu Shanshui, the materials of the boat had been specially treated. Gu didn't like the smell of the wood on the boat, so they typically wouldn't approach it. Li, Dragon Corpse River is too dangerous. Are you sure you want to go with me? Before boarding the boat, Gu Shanshui asked Li Mabai again. There's Zhou. There won't be too much danger. Just treat it as broadening my horizons, Li Mabai said with a smile. Gu Shanshui didn't say anything else. He led everyone onto the boat and rowed away from the riverbank, heading upstream. Dragon Corpse River wasn't very big, but the moment the boat left the riverbank, it felt extremely wide. Furthermore, there was a thick fog on the river surface. If it wasn't for an experienced person like Gu Shanshui, it would have been very easy for them to get lost in the fog. Zhou originally wanted to help Gu Shanshui row the boat, but Gu Shanshui told him, on Dragon Corpse River, the eyes can lie. He has to rely on his senses to find where the corpse bug is, so he can only row the boat himself. After the boat entered the fog, Gu Shanshui took out a container made of clay and filled it with river water. Then, he placed the container at the bow of the boat. Finally, he took out a goo that looked like a loach and placed it in the container. In such a place, Zhou wasn't in the mood to game. His psyche was highly concentrated as Truth Listener constantly scanned his surroundings to prevent any possible danger. Using Truth Listener, Zhou could sense that there were many dimensional creatures swimming in the nearby river. However, they didn't approach the wooden boat. It was unknown if it was because of the wooden boat itself or the Gu Shanshui had placed in the jar. The wooden boat slowly rowed across the dark river. Zhou and company abided by the taboos of Dragon Corpse River, so no danger occurred. As the wooden boat slowly sailed, Zhou suddenly felt cold sweat break out on his back. A terrifying palpitation made his heart pound. With Truth Listener's ability, Zhou realized that there seemed to be a huge shadow staring at them from the bottom of Dragon Corpse River. Plop! Plop! The goo in the jar suddenly jumped as though it had been given a fright, causing Gu Shanshui's expression to turn solemn. Gu Shanshui directly grabbed the goo from the jar and placed it in the river. The goo desperately swam into the distance, but before it could go far, it suddenly vanished, leaving only ripples on the river surface. With the goo gone, Gu Shanshui heaved a sigh of relief. The wooden boat slowly rowed, but the shadow at the bottom of the river was just too huge. After rowing for more than 10 minutes, the wooden boat was still above the shadow, unable to row out. Zhou tensed up. He didn't dare use Truth Listener to scan the shadow, afraid that it would alarm it. When the time came, the wooden boat would capsize. Zhou wasn't afraid, but the others on the boat probably wouldn't be able to survive. Thankfully, the shadow didn't move. Ever since it sucked the goo, it had only been watching them from the bottom of the river. Gu Shanshui rowed for more than half an hour before the wooden boat finally rowed out of the shadow's range. Only when the feeling of being watched vanished did Zhou secretly heave a sigh of relief. I wonder what's at the bottom of the river. Could it really be a dragon? However, it feels different from the dragons I've seen in the past. Its aura is completely different. In such a place, Zhou didn't want to cause trouble. It would naturally be best if he didn't have to fight. After rowing for 4 to 5 hours, a small island appeared on the river in front of him. The island was at most the size of a football field. There was a small mountain less than 100 meters tall on it. It was a typical volcano. From the mouth of the mountain, a large amount of thick fog spewed out. The thick fog above the Dragon Corpse River seemed to be spewed out from the small volcano. It's there. The corpse bug is in the volcano. After we go up the mountain, I'll lure the corpse bug out. Mr. Zhou, you can follow the plan. Gu Shanshui pulled the wooden boat to the shore and led everyone ashore. Zhou already knew Gu Shanshui's plan. All he needed to do was wait by the side. Only after the corpse bug was lured out by Gu Shanshui would he take action. Gu Shanshui got everyone to stay at the foot of the mountain and only took Gu Lu and Gu He up the mountain. They almost crawled forward. After arriving at the volcano crater, they took out some small bottles they had prepared. Every once in a while, they would pour a bottle of yellow liquid into the volcano crater. Zhou had heard from Gu Shanshui that the liquid was called corpse oil. It was extracted from corpses. Only with this could he lure the corpse bug out of the volcano. This was something that required a lot of patience. After 7 to 8 hours and more than 100 bottles of corpse oil were poured, there was finally a commotion in the volcano crater. Chapter 791. At the foot of the mountain, Zhou and company heard cracking sounds coming from the volcanic crater. When Gu Shanshui and company heard the sound, they slowly retreated from the volcanic crater. As they retreated, they poured the corpse oil on the ground, forming a thin line. Soon, Gu Shanshui and company retreated and hid behind the rocks with Zhou and company. Soon, There was a commotion from the volcanic crater. A bug crawled out. "Isn't this a horned beetle?" Zhou sized up the bug from afar and saw that it looked like a horned beetle. It was dressed in black armor and had a forked horn at the front of its head. The bug crawled out bit by bit, crawled along the corpse oil, and licked all the corpse oil on the ground clean. Seeing the bug crawl down bit by bit, Gu Shanshui's expression turned solemn. Gu Lu and Gu He also looked very nervous. Gu Shanshui looked at Zhou Wan, who nodded slightly. Gu Shanshui took out a metal container. It looked like a furnace, but it also looked a little like a cauldron. It was unknown what it was. While the corpse bug was still licking the corpse oil, Gu Shanshui placed the metal container in a crack in the rock and poured dozens of bottles of corpse oil in, almost filling the metal container. The smell emitted by the large amount of corpse oil immediately attracted the corpse bug's attention. It spread its transparent wings and flew towards the metal container. It landed on the edge of the metal container and extended its head to suck the corpse oil inside. The container was a little deep. After the corpse bug sucked half of it, it couldn't reach the corpse oil below. All it could do was crawl into the container. "Now!" Gu Shanshui immediately gestured for Zhou to take action as he ran towards the metal container. Zhou got the chick to fly over and land at the edge of the container. When the corpse bug saw the chick, it wasn't as afraid as ordinary Gu. It immediately bared its fangs and brandished its claws to confront the chick. However, it could be seen that it was somewhat afraid of the chick. It didn't immediately attack and rush out. While it was hesitating, Gu Shanshui had already rushed to the metal container. He held the lid in one hand and sprinkled some unknown powder into the container with the other. Then, with a smack, he covered the container. Gu Shanshui pressed down on the metal container with one hand and wrapped a red rope around it with the other, hoping to tie it up. The metal container suddenly shook violently. Zhou summoned Tyrant Behemoth and got it to help Gu Shanshui hold down the lid. With the help of Tyrant Behemoth's strength, the metal container immediately stopped shaking. However, there were continuous clanging sounds coming from inside. Gu Shanshui didn't care. All he did was wrap a rope around the metal container and wrap the red rope around it. According to Gu Shanshui's plan, he had already trapped the corpse bug. All he needed to do was bring it back and slowly domesticate it. However, to his surprise, cracking sounds came from the metal container. Gu Shanshui's expression changed drastically as he knew that something was amiss. He immediately decided to throw the metal container out. The metal container exploded in midair, and the red string snapped inch by inch. The corpse bug flew out and bared its fangs and claws. It opened its mouth and spat out a thick fog that enveloped Gu Shanshui. "Retreat! That's corpse mist!" Gu Shanshui shouted and quickly retreated. At the same time, he summoned dozens of strange goo. After the goo came out, they tried their best to suck the corpse mist, but they didn't suck much before they all died. The chick let out a strange cry and spat out a mouthful of golden flames. When the golden flames encountered the corpse mist, it immediately burned and instantly burned to nothing. The chick also rushed towards a corpse bug and pecked at it with its beak. However, to everyone's surprise, the corpse bug was even faster than the chick. With a flap of its wings, its horns slammed into the chick, sending it flying. It landed on the ground and rolled far away before stopping. Ever since the chick was born, it had never suffered such a huge loss. It flew up as though its feathers were on edge and spewed out large amounts of golden flames at the corpse bug, hoping to burn it to death. The corpse bug seemed to be somewhat afraid of the golden flames and didn't dare touch them. It flapped its wings to dodge the metal flames and flew towards the retreating Gu Shanshui. From the looks of it, the corpse bug's intelligence wasn't low. It even knew how to bully the weak and fear the strong. Gu Shanshui hurriedly summoned his goo to face the corpse bug, but when his goo encountered the corpse mist spewed out by the corpse bug, they immediately fell to the ground and twitched to death. They were useless. Zhou watched from the side and realized that the corpse mist spewed out by the corpse bug was more like a combination of bacteria or viruses than a poisonous mist. Once the bacteria and viruses invaded the goo's bodies, even the goo couldn't withstand it and quickly died. Those bacteria and viruses should be considered goo, right? This corpse bug is practically the mother of a goo. A random mouthful of fog it spits out contains a massive number of goo. Apart from the chick's flames that can restrain it, it's really difficult for others to deal with it. Zhou saw the chick fly over and spit out golden flames, burning the corpse mist away. Zhou didn't get Tyrant Behemoth to charge forward. Although Tyrant Behemoth was very strong, it was too huge. If it inhaled the bacteria and viruses in the corpse mist, no one knew what would happen. The corpse bug was the first goo that dared to fight the chick. However, it was still very afraid of the chick's golden flames. It didn't dare be touched by the golden flames. It used its speed to constantly change positions, hoping to rush over and bite the chick. The chick wasn't as fast as it, but its flight trajectory was very strange. Zhou watched for a while before widening his eyes. This fellow's flight trajectory resembled his transcendent flying immortal no matter how he looked at it. Holy sh**t. A bird actually learned my transcendent flying immortal movement technique? Zhou was dumbfounded. The chick used transcendent flying immortal to fight the corpse bug to a standstill. Its golden flames couldn't hit the corpse bug, and the corpse bug couldn't touch it. Master Gu, do you have a second plan? Zhou asked Gu Shanshui while the corpse bug and chick were fighting. Although he had many companion beasts on him, and it wasn't impossible for him to kill the corpse bug, it was meaningless for Gu Shanshui to kill it if he wanted it alive. Even the Gu pot made of pure essence gold and the blood thread rope made of blood thread, Gu can't trap it. Even if I have a way to lure it over, it's useless. Gu Shanshui shook his head and smiled bitterly. Upon hearing Gu Shanshui's words, Zhou recalled something. He took out the calabash and handed it to Gu Shanshui. Give it a try. See if you can use this to trap the corpse bug. Gu Shanshui knew the origins of the calabash and was delighted to see it. However, he couldn't find any holes despite flipping the calabash around. Chapter 792. If you inject your essence energy into it, it will automatically open a hole. However, it doesn't seem to have the ability to control the goo. It can only think of a way to get the goo in, Zhou said. Gu Shanshui gave it a try. Indeed, as long as he injected his essence energy, a gray fog would appear at the top of the calabash. He could place things through the gray fog. Gu Shanshui held the calabash and gritted his teeth. Then I can only give it a try. Gu Shanshui summoned his golden child life soul and got it to hold the calabash as it charged at the corpse bug. When the corpse bug saw Golden Child, it was like a bee seeing honey. It abandoned the chick and charged at Golden Child as though it wanted to devour it. Zhou was alarmed. He didn't know what Gu Shanshui's Golden Child life soul was to attract the corpse bug's attention. Golden Child could also use essence energy. He injected his essence energy into the calabash and took the opportunity when the corpse bug rushed over to store the corpse bug inside. Unfortunately, Golden Child was only an epic life soul, after all. Its speed was much slower than the corpse bug. With a flash, the corpse bug circled around the calabash and charged at Golden Child's head. Not good. Gu Shanshui's expression changed drastically. If his life soul was destroyed, it wasn't easy to condense a new one. In particular, his Golden Child life soul was actually a type of Common Thong. However, his Common Thong was a heaven child, not an unorthodox earth child or man child. It was extremely rare. Just as the corpse bug was about to slam into Golden Child's head, he suddenly saw a bamboo strike the calabash, causing the calabash's mouth to change direction and slam into the corpse bug. The corpse bug instantly vanished and was stored inside the calabash. Zhou extended his hand and beckoned back the sheathed bamboo blade that he had thrown out. Gu Shanshui was overjoyed as he hurriedly got Golden Child to retract his essence energy. The gray fog on the calabash vanished without a trace. A faint sound of collision came from the calabash. It was likely the corpse bug striking the calabash inside in a bid to rush out. However, it didn't seem to have much effect on the calabash. Mr. Zhou, it's all thanks to you that I was able to capture the corpse bug. I really don't know how to thank you, Gu Shanshui said excitedly. I'm just fulfilling my previous promise. Master Gu, don't take it to heart. However, When we return, you have to think of a way to find a container. I still have other uses for this calabash, Zhou said. I'll immediately think of a way to resolve it when I return, Gu Shui hurriedly said. Congratulations on fulfilling your wish, Master Gu. Li Maobai walked over with Butterfly and Mute, congratulating Gu Shui for finally catching the corpse bug. It's all thanks to you and Mr. Zhou. Gu Shui was very happy, but he didn't get carried away. Let's leave Dragon Corpse River first. It's not safe here. Everyone pushed the wooden boat down the river. Gu Shui steered the boat back the way they came. Not long after, Zhou felt that something was amiss. Previously, when they came here, the goo worms in the Dragon Corpse River did not get too close to this wooden boat. However, when they returned, the nearby goo worms were slowly approaching the wooden boat. Moreover, their numbers kept increasing. If it weren't for the fact that Birdie was on the ship, they would have already rushed up. Master Gu, something seems amiss, Zhou said to Gu Shui. Gu Shui had also discovered the abnormality. He nodded with a heavy expression and said, From the looks of it, it's because of the corpse bug that the goo in Dragon Corpse River have gathered. However, because of the divine bird, they don't dare approach. However, at this point, Gu Shui paused before saying, However, there might be an extremely terrifying creature in this Dragon Corpse River. If it's affected like these goo, I'm afraid even the divine bird's aura won't be able to intimidate it. When that happens, we will be in big trouble. Zhou immediately thought of the huge shadow at the bottom of the river when he came. Is there any solution? Zhou asked. Gu Shui shook his head slightly. Even the calabash and wooden boat can't block the signal emitted by the corpse bug. I'm afraid there's no good solution. After hesitating for a moment, Gu Shui said, If it really doesn't work, I'll release the corpse bug. Gu Lu and Gu He were alarmed as they hurriedly said, Master Gu, you can't. You finally caught the corpse bug after so much difficulty. This corpse bug is too important to you. You shouldn't let it go so easily. Perhaps there's no such terrifying creature in Dragon Corpse River, or perhaps that creature isn't affected by the corpse bug at all. Gu Shui shook his head and sighed. I never expected the corpse bug to be able to trigger the goo in Dragon Corpse River. It's indeed my wish to domesticate the corpse bug, but I can't gamble with so many of our lives. If we were on land, we could still think of a way, but we're in Dragon Corpse River now. There are too many taboos here. Once that creature appears, we will definitely die. With that said, Gu Shui prepared to open the calabash and release the corpse bug. Zhou suddenly said, Master Gu, even if you release the corpse bug now, I'm afraid it might not be able to quell the restlessness of the goo in Dragon Corpse River. We've already captured the corpse bug. With its intelligence and personality, do you think it will let us leave Dragon Corpse River safely, even if we release it? Gu Shui smiled bitterly and said, I also know that goo hold grudges, but apart from that, what else can we do? Li Maobai said, Master Gu, I think Zhou is right. Since goo hold grudges, it's the same whether we release it or not. Why don't we keep it as a hostage? It's more like a bug. Perhaps there's a chance of leaving Dragon Corpse River. Gu Shui gritted his teeth. Now that things have come to this, we can only take a gamble. It was my carelessness this time that made everyone suffer with me. If I don't die today, I'll apologize to everyone in the future. We'll talk about those matters in the future. Now, let's make some preparations. Even if there's really a creature in Dragon Corpse River that even the divine bird can't suppress, we won't just sit there and wait for death, Li Maobai said. The few of them discussed for a while and began to make arrangements. Unfortunately, their range of movement was limited to the wooden boat. They couldn't leave the wooden boat and fly into the sky, nor could they touch water. They couldn't even be injured. This was too restrictive for them. Zhou thought for a moment and summoned Primordial Spore. He got to enter the water to investigate the situation. No matter how powerful the goo in the water were, it was difficult for them to discover a companion beast like Primordial Spore. After Primordial Spore entered the water, it dived down according to Zhou's instructions and headed forward. Everyone did what they could and allowed the wooden boat to continue moving forward. More and more goo worms gathered in the surrounding river, and they were getting closer and closer to the wooden boat. They could see the splashes in the distance with the naked eye, and there were all kinds of goo worms squeezing around in the water. It was strange and disgusting. Under Zhou Wen's observation, there was a huge shadow approaching the wooden boat at the bottom of the river. Chapter 793. What Gu Shui was worried about happened. The huge shadow was slowly rising from the bottom of the river. Because of its arrival, the goo insects that were crowding around the wooden boat all scrambled to escape and soon disappeared without a trace. Layers of waves appeared on the river that didn't have many waves. Furthermore, the waves were getting bigger and bigger. With such obvious signs, Li Ma Bai, Gu Shui, and company clearly realized the seriousness of the problem. They stared at the river with solemn expressions. Whoosh! The huge wave pushed the wooden boat to the side. If not for Gu Shui's control, the wooden boat would have capsized in the river. Li Ma Bai, Butterfly, and company used their companion beast to block the river water that fell into the wooden boat, ensuring that the people in the wooden boat wouldn't be drenched by the river water, nor would it pour into the boat. But soon, everyone's eyes were attracted by the scene in front of them. They saw a huge body extend out of the river and stare at them like a god. In front of it, humans and even the wooden boat were as tiny as ants. Although most of its body was still in the river and they couldn't see its full appearance, just the exposed portion was enough to shock them. It was a dragon, but it wasn't completely a dragon. It had the appearance of a dragon, but its body wasn't made of flesh and blood. It didn't have dragon scales or flesh. It looked like a dragon condensed from coral, dazzling and strange. Zhou had seen many dragons. The white dragon in Old Dragon Cave, the black dragon in the Underground Sea, the torch dragon in Torch Dragon Hall, and even the Western dragon. However, no matter what kind of dragon it was, it couldn't be as strange and beautiful as the dragon in front of him. The color of the coral-like body changed according to its emotions. Sometimes it was snow white like jade, sometimes scarlet like blood, and sometimes colorful. It was like a huge work of art. Could this be the legendary dragon, King Gu? Heavens! There's no dragon corpse in the Dragon Corpse River. There's actually a dragon King Gu. Gu Shui widened his eyes as he stared at the gorgeous and terrifying creature in front of him. He cried out involuntarily. Gu Lu and Gu He were even worse off. They collapsed on the boat and even prostrated themselves in worship of the Dragon King Gu. A person like Zhou, one who didn't rear Gu, might not understand what the Dragon King Gu meant to people who reared them, but Gu Shui and company were already so terrified that they lost all fighting spirit. They were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Legend had it that phoenixes were the nemesis of Gu, while dragons gave birth to all Gu in the world. Legend had it that phoenixes were the nemesis of Gu, and dragons gave birth to all Gu in the world. These disasters were actually caused by Gu worms, and Gu worms were living beings that parasitized the dragon god. They would punish humans who had done wrong on behalf of the dragon god. From the point of view of modern humans, Gu were actually parasites of the dragon god. From the perspective of modern humans, Gu, dragon god, and many Gu. However, in the legends of these regions, if the parasites on the dragon god were extremely powerful, they would turn the tables and turn the entire dragon god into a Gu. Then, they would form the legendary king of all Gu, the Dragon King Gu. Of Lu of two of Gu. To them all. He of Gu no, he no of the of. No, he, to I, he. However, the life form in front of him undoubtedly had the characteristics of a dragon and a Gu. It looked like a divine dragon. Its body had a terrifying dragon might, but its body was similar to a coral structure. As for the coral itself, it was formed from many coral worms. The creature in front of him could also be seen as an amalgamation of countless Gu. These characteristics were extremely similar to the legendary Dragon King Gu. Furthermore, ever since this creature suspected to be the Dragon King Gu appeared, the Gu on Gu Shui, Gu Lu, and Gu He had been trembling. They couldn't move at all. It was even more terrifying than the chick suppression. To people who reared Gu, this was undoubtedly fatal. The chick stood at the bow and chirped at the Dragon King Goo. It looked very ferocious, but Zhou Wen, who knew the chick very well, could tell that it was very guilty. Otherwise, with the chick's personality, it would have spat out phoenix flames to burn the creature in front of it. The Dragon King Goo stared coldly at the chick, Zhou Wen, and company. It clearly wasn't afraid of the chick like the other Goo. It didn't even treat the chick as a threat. Although the chick had a phoenix bloodline, it hadn't fully matured. It could restrain ordinary Goo, but an existence like the Dragon King Goo wasn't something the chick could match. Zhou Wen noticed that the Dragon King Goo's gaze was fixed on the calabash containing the corpse bug. Clearly, it had been attracted by the corpse bug. Gu Shanshui raised the calabash with trembling hands and offered it to the Dragon King Goo with both hands. As a Goo breeder, no one dared to resist the Dragon King Goo because it was a supreme god in his heart. With a flash, Zhou Wen arrived at the bow of the boat and took the calabash from Gu Shanshui's hand. He held it in his hand and looked at the Dragon King Goo. As he wasn't a Goo breeder, he didn't fear the Dragon King Goo. Furthermore, even if he handed over the corpse bug and the calabash, the Dragon King Goo might not let them off. Roar! The Dragon King Goo seemed to be angered by Zhou Wen's actions as it let out a strange roar. Unlike the dragon roar Zhou Wen had heard before, the Dragon King Goo's voice was very strange. It had the resonance of a mutated species. Amidst the Dragon King Goo's roar, Gu Shanshui and company revealed looks of pain. They hugged their heads as though worms were biting at their brains. Zhou Wen also felt as though some extremely tiny creature had entered his ears through the sound and was about to invade his brain. This is a sound Goo that uses sound to transmit. Quickly block your ears. Don't listen to that sound. Gu Shanshui endured the pain and shouted. In fact, under the effects of Truth Listener and the Supreme Hell King Life Soul, Zhou Wen had already discovered the sound Goo hidden in the sound. He used the Supreme Hell King Life Soul's control over his body to seal his hearing and exclude the sound Goo. I know you can understand me. Let us leave the Dragon Corpse River. I'll return the corpse bug inside to you. If one of us dies, I'll turn it to dust now, Zhou Wen said to the Dragon King Goo as he raised the calabash in his hand. The Dragon King Goo was enraged as it opened its mouth and spewed out dragon breath at Zhou Wen. The dragon breath was like a tide of clouds, looking extremely terrifying. The chick opened its mouth and spewed out golden flames. When the golden flames came into contact with the dragon breath, although it burned a portion of the dragon breath, it was suppressed by the dragon breath. The dragon breath was about to inundate the wooden boat. Gu Shanshui, Gu Lu, and Gu He's faces were ashen. They didn't dare resist at all. Although Li Ma Bai, Butterfly, and Mute had already tried their best to block the dragon breath, it wasn't very effective. Their expressions turned rather ugly. Chapter 794. Suddenly, the white chick on Zhou Wen's shoulder flapped its wings and flew in front of the dragon breath. It opened its mouth and sucked. The dragon breath that filled the sky was sucked into the white chick's mouth, like rivers flowing into the sea. Moments later, there was nothing left. Gu Shanshui, Butterfly, and company looked at the white chick in a daze. They knew how powerful the chick was and guessed that it was a phoenix descendant. However, the white chick that Tai Sui had transformed into didn't appear too eye-catching. Furthermore, it didn't look like it was fire elemental, making it impossible for it to be a phoenix descendant. Furthermore, phoenixes were so rare. Having one was already a huge blessing. It was hard to imagine that a person would have two phoenixes. Furthermore, Tai Sui was usually in a daze and didn't move much. Most of the time, it stood motionless on Zhou Wen's shoulder. They didn't pay much attention to the dazed white chick, believing that it was only an ordinary companion beast at the epic stage. However, who knew that the Tai Sui would amaze everyone with a single move? It actually opened its mouth and swallowed all the dragon breath of the Dragon King Goo as though nothing had happened. It surprised them. Although Tai Sui was powerful, it wasn't truly invincible. The main reason was that the Dragon King Goo's dragon breath was somewhat different from a real dragon breath. The Dragon King Goo's dragon breath was somewhat similar to the corpse worm's corpse fog. They were formed from a large number of microscopic goo, and Tai Sui was the nemesis of these things. In fact, it wasn't just the dragon breath. Even the Dragon King Goo itself was a complicated microbial amalgamation. To Tai Sui, the Dragon King Goo's body was a feast. Tai Sui flapped its wings and flew towards the Dragon King Goo. The Dragon King Goo clearly didn't know how powerful Tai Sui was. It opened its mouth and swallowed Tai Sui that flew towards it. Everyone was alarmed. They originally imagined that the white chick could fight the Dragon King Goo, but to their surprise, it was swallowed in one gulp. The Dragon King Goo was the king of all goo. Its body produced all sorts of microbial goo. Once swallowed, a large number of goo would invade one's body. Even a mythical creature probably couldn't withstand it. At that moment, Gu Shanshui and company suddenly saw the Dragon King Goo roar at the sky as though it was in extreme pain. Then, they saw a small hole appear in its abdomen. Tai Sui crawled out and pecked at the Dragon King Goo's body. The Dragon King Goo's body was filled with goo. Ignoring eating it, ordinary creatures would be parasitized by the goo just by touching it. Even mythical creatures would probably die tragically. It was unbelievable that the white bird could casually peck at the Dragon King Goo's body. Is that really the Dragon King Goo? It can't be fake, right? Gulu's face was full of doubt. How could the legendary king of all goo, the Dragon King Goo, be casually swallowed by a little white bird? Tai Sui circled around the Dragon King Goo and kept pecking at it, pecking holes in its body. The Dragon King Goo unleashed a terrifying dragon aura and power, but it was useless against Tai Sui. Tai Sui was the nemesis of microorganisms. Even if Tyrant Behemoth fought, it might be parasitized by the goo on the Dragon King Goo's body. Even Torch Dragon found it difficult to withstand the Dragon King Goo's power. After all, the Dragon King Goo was transformed from a goo devouring a true dragon. It had a natural restraining effect on dragons. As for Tai Sui, it happened to be the nemesis of the Dragon King Goo. No matter how powerful the Dragon King Goo was, it could only be pecked at in front of Tai Sui. Gu Shanshui and company watched in a daze as the Dragon King Goo was pecked at by a little white bird. Finally, it escaped into the water and escaped through the bottom of the river. The legendary king of all goo had actually escaped just like that. Tai Sui's body grew bigger as it couldn't eat anymore. Furthermore, its speed wasn't fast, so it was impossible for it to catch up to the Dragon King Goo underwater. It flew back and landed on Zhou Wen's shoulder. Gu Shanshui and company looked at Tai Sui on Zhou Wen's shoulder in surprise. They originally imagined that a chick with the phoenix bloodline was already a godlike existence. They never expected that this little white bird, whose name couldn't be a phoenix, would be even more terrifying. Even the Dragon King Goo could only be ravaged in front of it. It even fled in such a sorry state. It was unbelievable. Unlike the chick, although Tai Sui looked similar to a chick, it didn't have the aura or abilities of a phoenix. Gu Shanshui and Li Mabai couldn't recognize its origins. Zhou Wen handed the calabash to Gu Shanshui again. Master Gu, let's leave this place first. However, Gu Shanshui didn't reach out to take the calabash. Mr. Zhou, if it weren't for you, we would have lost our lives. How would we have a face to ask for this corpse bug? It's best you stay. Zhou Wen smiled and said, I don't know how to tame goo. What's the point of keeping it? Master Goo, if you feel bad, teach me a few goo nurturing techniques when we return. Mr. Zhou, it's my honor that you are willing to learn how to nurture goo for me. I will definitely teach you everything I know without holding anything back, Gu Shanshui said seriously. Let's talk when we get back. This isn't a place to talk, Zhou Wen said as he handed the calabash to Gu Shanshui. Gu Shanshui didn't decline. After putting away the calabash, he put it away carefully before steering the boat towards the exit of Dragon Corpse River. Zhou Wen looked in the direction where the Dragon King Goo had vanished with a strange look in his eyes. If not for Tai Sui, it wouldn't have been easy to defeat the Dragon King Goo even with a mythical companion beast. Furthermore, it was very likely that they would have been parasitized by the goo before they even fought. However, even Tai Sui could only injure the Dragon King goo. Its body and the energy contained in it were too immense. Even Tai Sui couldn't digest them all. What concerned Zhou, one, was that the primordial spore he had placed in the river had taken the opportunity to burrow into the Dragon King goo's body as though it wanted to parasitize the Dragon King goo. However, Zhou could sense that the primordial spore hadn't succeeded for the time being. Now, it had been taken far away by the Dragon King goo. Due to the distance, Zhou could only sense that the primordial spore was still alive. However, the connection between them had become very weak. He didn't know how the primordial spore was doing in the Dragon King goo's body. If I can successfully parasitize the Dragon King goo and use it as my own, the goo in the South District won't be terrifying, Zhou thought. Zhou wasn't too worried about the safety of the primordial spore. It had an eternal, indestructible life providence, so it wasn't easy to kill it. However, it would take a long time to parasitize a mythical creature. Zhou couldn't wait for it in Dragon Corpse River, so he had to leave first. Without the threat of the Dragon King goo, the other goo were afraid of the chick and didn't dare rush over. The group successfully left Dragon Corpse River. Outside Dragon Corpse River, Zhou could sense the existence of the primordial spore. Although the connection was very weak, it was enough to determine the primordial spore's fate and location. Zhou didn't see the tiny palm symbol along the way and couldn't help but find it a pity. The Dragon Corpse River had no fewer goo than the Valley of No Return. If he could download it as a game dungeon, it would be a good place to grind. Unfortunately, he didn't find a tiny palm symbol. Chapter 795. After returning to Chiang Rai, he didn't see Li Xian and Worm Duga return. It was likely that the two of them had yet to return from the ice silkworm Gu King. Gu Shanshui wanted to think of a way to get a container to rear the corpse bug, so he returned to Mong Sat overnight. Zhou didn't go to Mong Sat with Gu Shanshui. He decided to head there in a few days to retrieve the calabash. The reason he chose to stay was because he wanted to go to the Xiao family to take a look and figure out the matter between Xiao Si and Wang Chanli Mabai planned on staying in Chiang Rai for a few more days before heading to Mong Sat with Zhou. At night, Zhou used the invisibility cloak and headed for the Xiao family. He planned on infiltrating the Xiao family to see if he could find out anything. The Xiao family lived in an exotic manner. Before arriving at the manor, Zhou would discover a problem. There were many goo lurking in the grass on both sides of the road. If it wasn't for Zhou Wen's supreme Hell King Life Soul and Truth Listener's ability, which allowed his senses to reach an extremely high level, it would have been very difficult for ordinary people to discover the goo. Xiao clan is really careful. They even placed goo worms outside the manor. Zhou didn't know much about goo. He didn't know which goo relied on smell to distinguish enemies, and which goo relied on sound to distinguish enemies. Therefore, he flew into the manor from the sky to avoid alarming the goo. However, after entering the manor, Zhou realized that although the manor's layout was very tight, this was only the periphery of the Xiao family. Behind the manor was a valley. It was a dimensional zone. The true core of the Xiao family was built in a dimensional zone. Using Truth Listener's ability to constantly scan, he found all the hidden mechanisms and arrangements of the Xiao family. The entrance of the dimensional zone was guarded by the Xiao family's guards, but that was secondary. It was impossible for 4 legendary humans to see through Zhou Wen's invisibility. What caught Zhou Wen's attention was that there was a statue placed at the entrance of the dimensional zone. The statue looked sinister. It was a Buddhist statue, but it was different from the Buddhist statues he had seen in Dragon Gate Grotto. Not only did it look ferocious and terrifying, but it also had a vertical eye at its glabella. It held a strange fork in its hand. In any case, Zhou had never seen such a Buddhist statue before. However, his sculpting technique was in the style of Buddhism. There was a Buddhistic glow carved on his back. Zhou could vaguely sense an aura similar to Kumin Thong from the Buddhist statue. The visual system of a spirit body is somewhat different from that of a human. It's not just based on body shape. I reckon that ordinary invisibility would not be able to fool that Buddhist statue. Zhou directly activated the wheel of destiny of the invisibility cloak and completely concealed his body before entering the dimensional zone. The guards and Buddhist statues didn't discover him as he successfully entered the valley. The moment he entered the valley, he found it difficult to breathe as though there was no oxygen in the valley. Zhou didn't discover any goo and immediately knew that it was the taboo power of this dimensional zone. All he could do was switch to the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. Indeed, he no longer felt suffocated. Although he didn't have Supreme Hell King's sharp senses, it was the same with Truth Listener. Zhou used Truth Listener to scan the entire valley before quickly moving in. As the invisibility cloak's wheel of destiny only had a 3-minute time limit, he had to figure out the situation in the dimensional zone in these 3 minutes. Zhou originally imagined that there would be all sorts of goo in such a valley, but there weren't. There was only one temple in the valley, but the style was very different from the temples in Luoyang. It was obvious that it was the local style of Chiang Rai. He couldn't see a single person outside the temple, but he saw quite a number of people inside. They were likely disciples of the Shao family. Some were practicing their techniques, while others were commanding goo. It was rather lively. When Zhou entered the temple's yard, he felt no reaction from the heaven-opening scripture of the highest elder. He knew that there was no taboo power here. As he trusted the guards of the manor outside and the taboo power in the valley, the defenses inside the temple weren't that tight. Zhou looked around the temple and realized that the deities consecrated in the temple hall weren't the Buddhist mighty figures that Zhou was familiar with. Instead, they were dolls that looked different. The ones consecrated here are all Kumen Thong and Kumen Ne. Zhou scanned the area and saw many dolls in the shape of men and women. He roughly knew what they were. Zhou wasn't interested in these things as he rushed to the backyard. He didn't have much time left. Although he wasn't afraid of being exposed, it would be impossible for him to eavesdrop on them if he was exposed. The temple was rather large, and there were many courtyards inside. Each courtyard consecrated a different Kumen Thong, making them look eerie and terrifying. Zhou had always felt that these religious buildings weren't aesthetically pleasing. No matter what kind of religious building it was, it gave him an uneasy feeling. Along the way, although he encountered quite a number of people from the Shao family, they didn't say anything that interested Zhou. Seeing that the 3-minute time limit was up, Zhou realized that there was no one in a nearby courtyard, so he entered first. After entering the yard, the 3-minute invisibility ended. Zhou was wearing the invisibility cloak, so he could only achieve the effect of invisibility. His body didn't vanish. Thankfully, there wasn't anyone here. The courtyard wasn't big, and there was only a temple hall inside. The door was open, and strangely, there was a black cloth hanging in front of the door. Zhou used Truth Listener to scan the interior and realized that the interior of the tiny temple hall was eerie and terrifying. The decorations inside were very simple. There was a wooden table with a Kumen Thong. The Kumen Thong's body was like jade. It was curled into a ball, and there was a crystal container outside. The yellow liquid inside the container enveloped the Kumen Thong. Now, Zhou roughly knew that it was corpse oil. Seeing that there was nothing inside, Zhou didn't enter. He turned around and was about to continue searching the temple when he suddenly saw a girl standing in front of him at some point in time. The girl didn't look very old, at most 18 or 19 years old. She wore strange clothes and looked rather delicate, but for some reason, there was a sinister feeling about her. At that moment, she was staring coldly at Zhou. Zhou felt his hair stand on end when he was stared at by the girl. Did she see me? Zhou was thinking about how to deal with such a situation. The other party was only a girl who had no grudges with him. If Zhou were to draw his saber and kill her, he wouldn't be able to do it. However, the girl was also very strange. She only stared coldly at Zhou without shouting or screaming. Could it be that she didn't see me? Zhou suspected as he tried taking 2 steps to the left. The girl's pupils shifted to the left with his movements. When Zhou took a few steps to the right, the girl's pupils shifted to the right again. She kept staring at him, clearly able to see the invisible Zhou one. Chapter 796. The girl kept looking at Zhou one, but she didn't shout or scream, nor did she look flustered. This placed Zhou one in a difficult position. If the girl had acted hostile or screamed, he would have long taken action to take her down. However, with her looking at him without screaming or making a fuss, Zhou one couldn't take action directly. There's so many people in Xiao family. The girl might not recognize all of them. Is it possible that she doesn't know that I'm not from the Xiao family? After some thought, Zhou one felt that it was very possible. Otherwise, there was no reason for the girl to not call out to him. If it were someone else who was eloquent, he might have been able to fool the girl. He might even be able to get some information out of her. Unfortunately, Zhou one wasn't eloquent, so he only smiled at the girl in a friendly manner. He pretended that he was just taking a stroll and wanted to leave the yard. Zhou one took a few steps to the side, hoping to circle around the girl. However, the girl took 2 steps to the side and blocked his path. Clearly, she wasn't willing to let him go. Ahem, sorry. I came to the wrong place. Sorry to disturb you, Zhou one said as he took a few steps to the side, hoping to circle around the girl. However, the girl blocked his path again. However, she had no intention of attacking. She didn't look like she had any intention of shouting. Why are you blocking my way? Is there anything I can help you with? Zhou one planned on trying to convince the girl with his poor eloquence. The girl remained silent as she continued looking at him, sizing him up. Are all the people from the Xiao family so strange? Zhou one felt that the girl was somewhat odd. Ignoring the fact that her actions were incomprehensible, Zhou one hadn't seen her when he first entered the yard. With Truth Listener's ability, it was impossible for Zhou one not to sense someone in the yard. However, when the girl stood behind him, Zhou one really didn't discover where she had come from. Could it be that this girl isn't human, but a ghost? Zhou one carefully sized up the girl, but he didn't discover anything wrong with her. She looked like a normal human girl. The girl remained silent. Zhou one was about to say something when he realized that someone was walking towards the yard. Zhou one looked into the yard. Apart from the temple hall, there was nothing else to hide. After glancing at the girl, Zhou one gestured for her to keep quiet before entering the temple hall. The girl could see him, but it didn't mean that others could. He planned on hiding and giving it a try. Since he had already been exposed, the situation couldn't get any worse. There was an offering table in the temple hall without any other decorations. Just as Zhou one was wondering where he could hide, he saw the girl walk in. With the girl following Zhou one, even if others couldn't see the invisible Zhou one, they would discover his existence because of the girl. Just as Zhou one was about to take action and put the girl down, he saw her point at a cloth curtain in the corner of the temple hall. She seemed to be hinting for Zhou one to hide behind it. The two of them had already walked to the entrance of the yard. Zhou one didn't dare speak again, afraid that they would hear him. All he could do was look at the girl and point at himself before pointing at the curtain. The girl seemed to understand his meaning and nodded. Zhou one couldn't care less as he tiptoed to the back of the curtain. Just as Zhou one steadied himself, he heard the door to the yard open. The two people had already walked in and quickly entered the temple hall. Zhou one wasn't afraid of being discovered. At most, he could storm out if he was discovered. However, he wouldn't be able to obtain any information. The two of them walked into the house and didn't pay attention to the back of the curtain. Clearly, they didn't expect someone to be hiding here. Furthermore, Zhou one was invisible. It was difficult to discover him with the naked eye. However, what puzzled Zhou one was that not only did they not discover him, they also ignored the girl beside him as though they didn't see her. The two people who entered the temple hall didn't look young. They were probably at least 50 years old. After entering the temple hall, one of the men placed something on the offering table. It was a small metal furnace with many tiny holes on it. Wisps of smoke emitted from the holes. The smoke didn't rise vertically, as though it was attracted by some force. It floated towards the cumin thong on the offering table. The man bowed at the cumin thong on the offering table before getting up and walking to the side. "Sixth brother, have you investigated Seer's matter?" the man who put down the cigarettes asked. According to the intelligence from the imperial capital's spies, Little C went to the Great Wall with Wang Chan. There should be another person who went with them. This person has a very good relationship with Wang Chan. We haven't found out who it is yet, Xiao Youqi answered. In your opinion, could it be that the Wang family discovered our goal and deliberately eliminated Seer? Xiao Tianfang said with a frown. From the looks of it, it shouldn't be. If the Wang family really discover our goal, they definitely wouldn't only attack little C. It's also impossible for them to explain Xiao Ci's matter to us. They might even fall out with our Xiao family. But from the looks of it, there aren't any signs of this, Xiao Youqi said. Xiao Tianfang sighed and said, the Wang family is a family from the East District after all. Even if they are stronger than our Xiao family, it won't be easy for them to come to the South District to touch our Xiao family. I'm not afraid of them falling out with us. Unfortunately, with Seer's death, our plan probably won't have a chance. Brother, is there nothing else that can replace Wang Chan's life providence? Xiao Youqi asked. If there was, we wouldn't have taken such a huge risk to target the Wang family, Xiao Tianfang explained. Xiao Tianfang explained, we've studied Gu Lady Kamene for so many years. Although she has successfully advanced to the mythical stage, she's ultimately unable to control it freely. In recent years, her control has become weaker and weaker, much less refine her into her own life soul. Now that she's already at the mythical stage, it's impossible to refine her into a life soul. However, using Wang Chan's goddess of misfortune life providence, we can create a misfortune Kamene. We can let her and Gu Lady Kamene suppress and influence each other. This way, we can take the opportunity to grasp them firmly in our hands, Xiao Tianfang said. Can we use a heaven child to replace the misfortune Kamene? Xiao Youqi asked. It's not that simple. Gu Lady Kamene is the reincarnation of the Gu god. We forcefully refined her into a Kamene before she was born. Although she's not a true god, she's not something ordinary Kumanthongs can compare to. Only some especially powerful Kumanthongs can affect her. Currently, the best chance we have is to refine Wang Chan into a misfortune Kamene. The other methods are even more difficult and hopeless, Xiao Tianfang said. Chapter 797. When Zhou heard their conversation, how could he not understand? The Dugu family's guess was right. Back then, it wasn't Gu that killed and dug out the infant. It was done by the Xiao family. They refined the infant into a Kamene and advanced it to the mythical stage. Zhou Wen's understanding of Kamene was very limited. He didn't know how Kamene grew up, but the Xiao family had probably tried their best. Now that they couldn't control Kamene, they wanted to use Wang Chan to refine another Kamene to restrain Gu Lady Kamene. What a vicious Xiao family. In such an era, it's not wrong to want to become stronger. It's not wrong to use all sorts of means, but to be so vicious, one has to be prepared to be treated the same. Zhou Wen's killing intent rose. Zhou Wen wanted to summon the light concealment sword and kill Xiao Youqi and Xiao Tianfang first. The two of them definitely wouldn't be wronged. As for the other Xiao family members, he would decide based on the situation. Just as he was about to take action, he suddenly realized that the girl was standing in front of him as though she wanted to stop him from attacking Xiao Youqi and Xiao Tianfang. Zhou Wen looked at the girl in front of him and suddenly understood something. He thought to himself, could this girl be the Gu lady that they refined into a Kamene? The more Zhou Wen thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. The one consecrated in the temple hall was likely Gu Lady Kamene. Then, this strange girl was very likely what Gu Lady would look like when she grew up. Typically, Kamene wouldn't grow up, but after Kamene and Essence Energy Arts combined, anything was possible. She's now under the Xiao family's control. If I kill someone from the Xiao family, she will definitely become my enemy. With this in mind, Zhou Wen didn't take action for the time being. Gu Lady was a pitiful person. If she wasn't born magical, she wouldn't have been harmed by the Xiao family. Even her parents died tragically. She was refined into a Kamene before she was even born. It could be said to be extremely tragic. Zhou Wen wasn't sure if she could survive if he killed her master, so he planned on not taking action. Xiao Tianfang thought for a moment and continued, Regardless of whether the Wang family senses it or not, let's put Wang Chan's matter aside for now. Let's try our best to capture the Ice Silkworm Goo King. If we have the Ice Silkworm Goo King, we won't have to rely too much on Goo Lady's strength. The Ice Silkworm Goo isn't easy to capture. I originally thought that with Goo Lady's help, we would be able to capture it. I knew that there wasn't one Ice Silkworm King, but a pair. Goo Lady isn't a match for the pair. I need to think of another way. How's the taming of that mythical blood scorpion goo? Can it be used? Xiao Tianfang asked after some thought. Xiao Yoqi said with a bitter smile. I don't know why, but the mythical goo that we use Goo Lady to capture are especially difficult to tame. The three from before refused to submit after being tamed for so long. This one is slightly better, but I can barely control it. I can't control it as I wish. That's enough. Bring it along and use it to distract the Ice Silkworm Goo King. As long as the pair of Ice Silkworm Goo Kings are separated, Goo Lady should be more than enough to deal with one. Xiao Tianfang looked at the Kamene on the offering table and continued, Prepare the blood scorpion goo. We'll go tomorrow to prevent any accidents. Worm Dugu is also eyeing the pair of ice silkworms. We can't let him succeed first. I understand. I'll prepare it now, Xiao Liuqi replied. Do a good job. In the future, you will take over the position of family head. However, as family head, you first have to have strength that convinces others. If you can successfully capture the pair of ice silkworm Goo Kings this time, you will be able to tame and control one of them, Xiao Tianzong said. Brother, you are in your prime. Xiao Liuqi was immediately overjoyed, but he didn't dare show it. Xiao Tianfang waved his hand. I know my own matters. All these years, in order to suppress and control Goo Lady, my body has been deteriorating day by day. My mind is failing as well. In the future, the Xiao family will still have to rely on you. You should bear the responsibility. Brother, don't worry. I definitely won't let you down, Xiao Liuqi hurriedly said. All right, go prepare first. I hope the capture of the ice silkworm Goo King will go smoothly. Xiao Tianfang gestured for Xiao Liuqi to send him out. After Xiao Liuqi left, Xiao Tianfang stood in front of the Kamene alone. He reached out to touch the crystal barrier outside and said with a strange expression, It's been so many years, but I still haven't been able to completely tame you. Now that the plan to snatch Wang Chan's misfortune Kamene has failed, if you still don't submit, I can only take the final step. My body really can't take it anymore. After I obtain the ice silkworm Goo King, I'll completely wipe away your consciousness. Although that will greatly reduce the Kamene's spirituality and abilities, you have forced me into a corner. This is the only step I can take. Xiao Tianfang stood there and looked at the Kamene for a while before leaving the courtyard. From beginning to end, the girl stood in front of Zhou Wan, preventing him from harming Xiao Tianfang. Why are you still protecting him after he caused you such harm? Zhou Wan asked. The girl remained silent, but Zhou Wan seemed to think of a reason and asked, Is it because he's your master? If he dies, you'll also be hurt? The girl unexpectedly nodded, as though she was confirming Zhou Wan's words. Zhou Wan was overjoyed when he saw the girl finally react. He asked, Is there a way to prevent you from being hurt? The girl only looked at him without answering. Zhou Wan snapped to his senses and knew that the girl couldn't speak. Therefore, he pointed at the Kamene on the offering table and said, If he transfers this to me, will you not be hurt after he dies? This time, the girl had a reaction and nodded again. All right, I know what to do. Wait for me for a few days. I'll soon save you, Zhou Wan said to the girl before turning to walk out of the temple hall. The girl seemed to understand what he meant and didn't stop him this time. After Zhou Wan left the courtyard, he temporarily left the Xiao family. Goo Lady was very magical. Zhou Wan didn't want to see her die with Xiao Tianfang. He planned on getting Goo Lady over first before settling the score with the Xiao family for Wang Chan. After Zhou Wan left the Xiao family, he returned to his residence and called Gu Shanshui. Thankfully, he had already arrived in Mongsat, and his phone had signal. He quickly picked up the call. Zhou Wan asked some questions about Kumanthong and Kamene and confirmed that his plan was feasible. At night, Worm Dugu and Li Xian returned together. The situation didn't look good, and Worm Dugu's expression was especially ugly. Li Xian didn't say anything today. Zhou Wen knew that Worm Dugu's failure was definitely tragic, so Li Xian didn't say anything. Chapter 798. Why don't we forget our bet? It was just a joke, Li Xian said to Worm Dugu. What joke? I, Worm Dugu, am a man of my word. If I can't catch the ice silkworm Gu King for you, I'll be your disciple, Worm Dugu said with a glare. Li Xian smiled and said, I've seen your abilities. If there's only one ice silkworm Gu King, you will definitely be able to catch it. However, there are two now. This is unexpected. Even if we fight to a draw, no one will lose or win. Isn't that fair? No. A man's promise is worth its weight in gold. If I can't catch the ice silkworm, I'll acknowledge you as my master. I won't go back on my word. With that said, Worm Dugu turned to look at Zhou Wen and said, If Li Xian is my master, Zhou Wen, you are my uncle master. It's not too much for an uncle master to teach me a little, right? Zhou Wen looked at Worm Dugu in disbelief. This fellow was actually from one of the 6 hero families, the Dugu family that dominated the South District. This was way too shameless. All right, did you have this idea from the beginning? Li Xian was also taken aback when he heard that. Only then did he realize that he had been fooled. Worm Dugu chuckled and said, My principle is practicality. So what if I acknowledge you as my master? You still need me to teach you how to rear Gu. In name, you are my master, but in reality, I'm still your master. It's just a title. It doesn't matter. If Zhou Wen can teach me how to rear a phoenix, I'll even call him master, much less uncle master. Zhou Wen and Li Xian were dumbfounded. This was the first time they had seen someone like Worm Dugu. It was an eye-opener. I really don't know how to rear a phoenix. This silly bird insisted on following me. I usually don't care much about it. It eats whatever I have. I can't teach you, Zhou Wen said. However, Worm Dugu immediately shook his head and said, No. I've long read about the habits and eating habits of a phoenix in ancient books. If I had a phoenix divine bird, I would know how to rear it myself. I don't need you to teach me. Then why are you learning from me? Don't tell me you want me to help you find another phoenix? I don't have that ability, Zhou Wen said in puzzlement. I know what to fear, but I don't have a phoenix. I just want to learn from you how to make a phoenix willingly follow me. Worm Dugu said, I already said that this silly bird is naturally willing to follow me. There's no trick to it. Perhaps its character is better, Zhou Wen said. Old Zhou is right. Back when the 3 of us encountered the chick, only old Zhou was chosen, Li Xian added. Everything in this world is caused by cause and effect. It is impossible for there to be no cause. If there is no cause, then it could only mean that you all have yet to discover the cause. Perhaps the primordial energy art you cultivate in is rather special, or perhaps you have a hidden special physique, or perhaps something on you has attracted it. In short, there must be a reason. That's what I need to know. Worm Dugu didn't say a few words seriously before he said to Zhou Wen with a cheeky smile, Anyway, there's a high chance that I won't be able to catch the ice silkworm this time. In the future, you will be my Uncle Master Zhou. If you want to teach, teach. If you don't, let me follow you and learn by myself. Zhou Wen didn't wish to speak to Worm Dugu anymore. He turned to Li Xian and said, I'll help you capture the ice silkworm, Gu King, tomorrow. However, after capturing it, you have to lend it to me for 2 days. Lend? How? Worm Dugu curled his lips and said, Gu can't be changed once it recognizes its owner. How are you going to return it after borrowing it? I don't want the ice silkworm Gu King to recognize me as its owner. I just need to borrow it to do something. I'll return it to you after I'm done, Zhou Wen said. Of course not. You can even take it directly, much less borrow it, Li Xian said with a smile. Worm Dugu was a little displeased when he heard that. If you want to use the phoenix myth to capture the ice silkworm Gu King, I advise you not to go. Although the phoenix divine bird is powerful, it's still a young one. The ice silkworm, Gu King, won't be afraid of it. If you make a mistake, you might end up killing the phoenix divine bird. That would really be a huge loss. Let's go to the place tomorrow and take a look. Zhou Wen also knew that the ice silkworm Gu King was definitely not easy to capture. However, the Xiao family was going to capture the ice silkworm, Goo King, tomorrow. He wanted this opportunity. He wanted to snatch the ice silkworm, Goo King, from the Xiao family and use it to exchange for Goo Lady. As long as Xiao Tianfeng wasn't a fool, he would definitely exchange 2 ice silkworm Goo Kings for a Kumine that might take Xiao Tianfeng's life. After all, he had already planned on wiping Goo Lady's spiritual consciousness. When that happened, Goo Lady Kumine's abilities would be greatly reduced. She would probably be inferior to an ice silkworm. In comparison, anyone would know how to choose. All right, I'll see how you capture the ice silkworm, Goo King, tomorrow. If you can capture it, I, Worm Dugu, will immediately acknowledge you as my master, Worm Dugu said. Clearly, he didn't think highly of Zhou. Come on, there's no sense of accomplishment at all being your master, Li Xian said. You can't say that. You might not have a sense of accomplishment now, but if you were to walk in the South District and encounter someone from the Dugu family, saying that they're my master, how awe-inspiring would that be? You wouldn't feel a sense of accomplishment, Worm Dugu said with a smile. Zhou and Li Xian looked at him in disdain. With his personality, it was unknown how many masters and uncle masters he had acknowledged outside. It would be strange if the Dugu family was willing to acknowledge him. Before dawn the next day, Zhou woke Li Xian and Worm Dugu up and got them to head to where the ice silkworm Goo King was. He had previously heard Xiao Tianfeng and Xiao Liuqi's conversation and knew that the Xiao family was going at this time. If they were late, the Xiao family might have already succeeded. It wasn't good to go early either. Before the Xiao family arrived, they would take away the ice silkworm Goo King. That way, the Xiao family wouldn't know that the ice silkworm Goo King was in Zhou hands. Although Worm Dugu was somewhat puzzled and didn't know why Zhou had to go so early, he still brought the 2 of them to Wind Ridge. When they arrived, they realized that someone was already fighting the ice silkworm Goo King. The 2 people in the lead were Xiao Liuqi and Xiao Tianfeng. In front of Xiao Tianfeng, there was an ice blue silkworm the size of a rugby ball crawling on the ground. Wherever the silkworm crawled, the ground was immediately covered in frost. It was obvious how low its temperature was. It's no wonder Worm Dugu said that the chick probably can't restrain the ice silkworm. With such ice elemental powers, the chick's phoenix flames will definitely be much less effective against it, Zhou thought. Xiao Liuqi discovered Zhou and company. When he saw Worm Dugu, his expression changed slightly. Clearly, he was afraid that Worm Dugu would snatch the ice silkworm Goo King. Chapter 799. Strange. Why is there only one ice silkworm? Where's the other ice silkworm? Worm Dugu said with a frown. Could it be that the people from the Xiao family lured the 2 ice silkworms away? Li Xian said. Worm Dugu shook his head and said, These 2 ice silkworms are a pair. They have a telepathic ability. It's not that easy to separate them. If they could be separated, I would have lured them away long ago. Would the Xiao family even have a chance? Maybe they have the ability, but you don't. Just because you can't lure them away doesn't mean they can't, Li Shuo said deliberately. Surprisingly, Worm Dugu wasn't angry this time. After some thought, he said, That's very possible. Li Xian looked at Worm Dugu in surprise. Every time he mentioned Gu, Worm Dugu would have a proud attitude as though he was number 1 in the world. It was unbelievable that he would admit that he was inferior to the Xiao family. You don't have to look at me like that. Have you forgotten what I told you? If the Xiao family's mythical Kuminthong is really refined from the Gu god's reincarnation, it's not surprising that it can lure the ice silkworm away, Worm Dugu said. Zhou knew that Worm Dugu was right. Gu Lady had lured the ice silkworm away. Xiao Tianfeng held the Kumine in the temple hall, but Gu Lady was nowhere to be seen. She must have lured the other ice silkworm away. This ice silkworm was trapped here by the Xiao family and was currently fighting with a blood-colored scorpion. The blood scorpion was clearly no match for the ice silkworm. Its body was almost frozen by the ice mist spewed out by the ice silkworm. It was all thanks to the Shao family's various goo and companion beasts that the blood scorpion could barely hold back the ice silkworm. As a result, the Shao family had sacrificed a large number of goo and companion beasts. Furthermore, the Shao family was still using Kumin Thong to augment the blood scorpion. This was only enough to hold back the ice silkworm. The ice silkworm's ice aura was extremely powerful. Zhou had seen some ice elemental companion beasts, but this was the first time he had seen one as powerful as the ice silkworm. As long as they came into contact with its icy aura, be it goo worms or Kumin Thong, their bodies would gradually freeze. Moreover, the ice aura seemed to have the characteristic of spreading. As long as one came into contact with a little bit, the body would become colder and colder. Many goo worms only came into contact with a little bit of the ice aura. At first, it was not a big problem, but after a while, they were frozen into ice cubes, and finally, their bodies were frozen to pieces. Should we make a move? Now that the two ice silkworms have been separated, it's a great opportunity, Li Xian asked Worm Dugu. There's no rush. Let's wait and see. They aren't a match for the ice silkworm. Worm Dugu paused for a moment before saying, After all, our Dugu family is the king of the South District. We can't be too ugly. Otherwise, I'll be nagged at by those fellows at home. It'll be a headache. The Shao family couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when they saw that Worm Dugu and company were only a distance away, without any intention of advancing. Brother, do you think Worm Dugu will snatch our ice silkworm? Xiao Liuqi whispered to Xiao Tianfang. Xiao Tianfang said with a solemn expression, The Dugu family controls the southern district, and they do things fairly on the surface. But I still have to be prepared. I hope the Goo Poison Lady can quickly capture the other ice silkworm. How's the situation with Goo Lady? Xiao Liuqi asked. It's very vague. I only know that they're fighting, Xiao Tianfang said. Brother, your perception of Goo Lady is getting weaker and weaker. Will there be a problem? Xiao Liuqi asked worriedly. As long as her main body is in my hands, she won't have the ability to resist me. If I want her to die, she can only die, Xiao Tianfang said coldly. Xiao Liuqi sighed and said, Goo Lady is just too special. We've been providing for her for so many years, but we can't even see her spirit body. We even implicated you, brother, to suffer the power of the Kumin Nace backlash. If we could really take her in as our own, our Shao family wouldn't be limited to a corner of Chiang Rai. As long as we can capture this pair of ice silkworms and domesticate them, our Shao family will still be able to soar, Xiao Tianfang said. Xiao Liuqi nodded and said, Thankfully, there are detailed records of the ice silkworm Goo King in the Goo nurturing art I obtained from the couple. Otherwise, even with Goo Lady's help, it would be very difficult for us to separate the two ice silkworms. Xiao Tianfang's expression turned cold. Didn't I tell you not to mention this again? Xiao Liuqi hurriedly said, Sorry, brother. I misspoke. Zhou was very far away from Xiao Tianfang and company, but Truth Listener's ability allowed him to hear their conversation clearly. Let's find Goo Lady and the other ice silkworm first. Zhou used Truth Listener to conduct a large-scale search. Soon, he discovered an ice silkworm in a distant swamp, but he didn't find Goo Lady. Stay here and keep an eye on that ice silkworm. I'll find the other ice silkworm, Zhou said to Li Xian before quietly retreating. Soon, the Shao family realized that one person was missing from Worm Dugu's side. However, Worm Dugu was still around. It was only a youth missing, so they weren't too worried. After all, even Worm Dugu couldn't capture the ice silkworm. Even if a youth was from the Dugu family, it was impossible for him to capture the ice silkworm alone. Furthermore, there were some traps set up there. If anyone approached, Xiao Tianfang and company would know. After Zhou left, he put on the invisibility cloak and quickly approached the other ice silkworm. In an area relatively close to the ice silkworm, he discovered some goo set up in the swamp. Zhou flew over without alarming the goo. When he arrived at the ice silkworm, he saw an icy blue ice silkworm. This ice silkworm was slightly larger than the previous one. Strangely, Zhou didn't discover Goo Lady with Truth Listener, but when he looked with his eyes, he realized that she was facing the ice silkworm. This is really strange. Truth Listener's ability can't discover Goo Lady. Even Xiao Tianfeng, who's Goo Lady's owner, can't see her. Why can I see her? Zhou was somewhat puzzled. If he used the Supreme Hell King Life Soul, it wouldn't be strange for him to see a spirit body. However, Zhou didn't use the Supreme Hell King Life Soul. He didn't even use any special powers to see Goo Lady, who others couldn't. This left him very puzzled. It was a little different from what Zhou had imagined. Xiao Tianfeng said that Goo Lady was fighting the ice silkworm, but the scene he saw was completely different. The Goo Lady squatted on the ground and used her fingers to tease the ice silkworm. The terrifying ice silkworm was like a pet dog. It was being teased by the Goo Lady, but it had no intention of attacking the Goo Lady. Zhou watched as the ice silkworm rolled on the ground from Goo Lady's teasing and thought to himself, such a terrifying ice silkworm is actually being played with by Goo Lady. It's really terrifying. Thankfully, the Xiao family can't really control Goo Lady. Otherwise, with her abilities, the Xiao family's strength would have long exceeded this. Upon seeing Zhou come over, Goo Lady stood up and looked at him. The invisibility ability was clearly useless against her. I just want to play games in peace. Just want to play games in peace that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.